On February 24th, 2020, a 911 call from Winter Park, Florida captured a woman's frantic voice as she described a tragic end to a playful night gone terribly wrong. Sarah Boone, then 42, lived with her boyfriend George Torres, also 42, in a townhouse that they shared. She told authorities that a night of drinking, crafts, and games led to George climbing into a suitcase for a game of hide and seek. Sarah said that she went to bed, assuming that he could free himself. But by morning, George was dead, still zipped inside the suitcase. But as the investigation unfolded, more and more evidence came to light, which made the authorities question whether it was an accident or a murder. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 39 of the Darklivity podcast. I'm your host, Kimberlea, and I'm here with the man who just chopped off all his hair. You told me to warn you, Jonathan.
Hi. Darklivity. It's the dark downward slope into the degradation of the human mind and the consequences that such darkness brings to light.
He cut his hair. I told him to do a before and after picture, and I don't think you did.
I did not.
It was like down to here.
Yeah.
Okay, they can't see my hand. It was like down to his elbows. Right?
Yeah.
It was pretty long.
It was
like
long.
Here. I'm sure if it was straightened, it would be down to your waist.
Oh, yeah.
But it's looking great.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We are doing Mazzie's first Thanksgiving today.
We are. She's going to have gravy.
Yeah, she's going to taste a little gravy. I'll take pictures and videos for all of you. But let's get into this case for today. Most of you have heard of this case, even if you don't know the individuals involved by name. It's referred to as the Suitcase murder. But as usual, we are going to dive in to not just what happened, but also who the individuals involved were before the crime occurred. So let's start with Sarah. Her parents, John and Karen Paulson, exchanged vows on June 11th, 1972 in Atlanta, Georgia. Over the next couple decades, the Paulson family grew and expanded, welcoming children Tyler, Sarah, and Philip into the Paulson family. During the early 1980s, the family made a bold decision to relocate from Georgia to Orlando, Florida, where Karen and her father started a business called High Tech Glass Coating. While in Orlando, Sarah Paulson made a name for herself on the popular Nickelodeon children's game show, Nick Arcade. Who remembers this show? I know I do.
Oh, yeah.
The series aired from 1992 to 1997 on weekend afternoons, and contestants were divided into two teams where they competed in a trivia challenge, with the winning team advancing to the video zone. In the video zone, the contestants faced off against the virtual video game wizard of the day. And the series was taped at Nickelodeon Studios at Universal Studios, Florida. Sarah's team didn't make it to the video zone, but Sarah's appearance on Nick Arcade was memorable. And it wasn't the only notable moment in the series. In 1993, Joey Fatone, if you know, you know, the future member of NSYNC, graced the Nick Arcade stage as a contestant as well. However, his team fell short of making it to the final round, just like Sarah's. Sarah could have been famous for something other than what happened. Her life could have gone in a totally different direction.
Sarah and her two brothers attended Edgewater High School. However, tragedy struck when Sarah was a senior. Her father, John, passed away. After her father's passing, Sarah's mother, Karen, now a single mom and a widow with 3 kids to raise, enrolled in a nursing program at Valencia Community College to be recertified as a nurse. This career had once brought her joy and fulfillment, but now it served as a means to rebuild her life. Sadly, Karen's life was also tragically cut short in 2003 when her daughter Sarah was just in her mid-20s. This was a shocking moment for the children who are now without a mother and a father.
And I just want to say that no matter how old someone is, even though she was in her mid-20s, losing a parent is very traumatic.
After her mom passed away, Sarah was trying to figure out life without the compass she used to rely on. Thankfully, she had Brian Boone by her side. They'd been dating for a while before tying the knot in 2005. The two of them bought a house in Orange County, Florida, and started building their life together. Things seemed to be looking up for Sarah. She had a caring husband, a beautiful home, and so much to look forward to. In 2011, she and Brian welcomed their first and only child, Lucas, into the world.
Lucas's birth was an exciting time for the couple as they embraced their new role as parents. In her words, Sarah described herself as an outstanding mother, dedicated to caring for their son. However, as time passed, Brian began noticing a change in Sarah. While the birth of Lucas was undoubtedly a joyous occasion for them, it also came with its fair share of challenges. Sarah's alcohol consumption, which had always been present, especially after her mother's untimely death, seemed to escalate at an alarming rate. Brian started noticing that Sarah's drinking habits were becoming problematic, and it started to impact the relationship and the family dynamic. Before Lucas's arrival, Sarah had the freedom to indulge in her drinking whenever she felt like it. But now, with the responsibility of motherhood, Sarah found herself trapped. The bars and the clubs that once beckoned her were no longer an option. Sarah struggled to adapt, unable to break free from the demands of motherhood to reach for her go-to stress reliever and mind-numbing solution to forgetting all of her problems and trauma: alcohol.
And as the time went on, things between Sarah and Brian just kept getting worse. By 2017, they decided to go their separate ways. Brian moved out of their home and back in with his parents for the time being. They even tried marriage therapy to work things out, but in the end, it wasn't enough to save their relationship. Even though they had been separated, Brian did move back in with Sarah for a little while, but that didn't last long. The constant flow of people in and out of the house and Sarah's partying caused more strain on their relationship. Brian ended up moving out again, realizing that their son Lucas needed a more stable and private environment. Eventually, Sarah and Brian finalized their divorce and agreed to split custody of Lucas 50-50.
Following the divorce settlement, Sarah relocated to a 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhome. It was a 2-story home at 4748 France Lane, unit number 3 in Winter Park, Florida. It's located in the northern suburbs of Orlando, and this area is known for its picturesque lakes, well-maintained parks, and tree-lined streets. With a population of around 30,000 people, Winter Park is generally regarded as a safe community, family-friendly, and affordable. Now single, Sarah was feeling lost. She was feeling insecure and in need of a change of scenery. Sarah set out for a walk to a nearby bar one night, and as Sarah settled in, nursing a cold beer, she caught the attention of a handsome stranger named George Torres. Sarah was captivated by George's charm, his intelligence, and sense of humor. She actually couldn't believe that someone like him would be interested in someone like her. Sarah was a blonde with blue eyes and fair skin, a distinctive laugh who liked to have a lot of fun. And George was Hispanic with dark features, and Sarah found him to be very different from the men who usually gave her attention and who she was usually drawn to. Sarah, feeling broken from her recent divorce, got a boost of confidence when George began paying a lot of attention to her that night.
George was also dealing with a separation, and it didn't take long for him and Sarah to find comfort in each other's company. The night they met, they spent hours at the bar just talking. They shared their stories, laughed, and honestly bonded mostly over drinking together.
Exactly.
Eventually, Sarah and George became inseparable.
I would say enabling one another. I mean, yes, inseparable, but because they were relying on each other.
I agree. They were definitely commiserating. Sarah and George definitely enabled each other to get pretty wasted and ignore their responsibilities. Sarah started showing up late to pick up her 9-year-old son from school, sleeping in and drinking whenever she felt like it. George became her go-to drinking buddy. Eventually, he moved into her townhouse, supposedly to help with the monthly bills. According to Sarah, they had an agreement. Even though the house was rented in her name, George would live there and chip in financially. She made it clear that his contributions were meant to be automatic, so they wouldn't have to argue or constantly talk about money.
Yeah, I think they were supposed to just be coming straight out of his paycheck or being direct deposited. And he eventually did get divorced as well. I think, he was going through the separation, but then finally he was divorced. And on the surface, Sarah and George appeared to be a loving couple, but things were not as they seemed. Something sinister lurked beneath the surface, waiting to erupt in the most unimaginable ways. Those who knew George Torres thought he was a good guy.
George was born on February 13th, 1978 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was raised in a loving household. His parents, Blanca and George Sr., had 10 children total. George's siblings were Victor, Maria, Aurora, Jose, Juan, Moises, Pharrell, Ezekiel, and Victoria.
That's a really good job on those names, because I know if I would have said them, I would have messed them up. But imagine how hard it is to come up with 10 names. We couldn't even come up with one name, but I also think it would be fun to pick that many names.
We got a notepad with all names already picked out, don't we?
Yes, we do.
George spent most of his life in Philadelphia, where he met Camille, the woman he fell deeply in love with. Their relationship flourished, and they eventually got married. Together, they had 3 children, Anne Victoria, Destiny, and George III. For a while, life seemed to be going well for the family, but in 2016, things took a turn, and George and Camille decided to separate. That's when George made the big decision to leave Philadelphia behind and head to sunny Florida, where many of his siblings and relatives had already settled. George seemed to really embrace his newfound freedom. He stayed active on social media, often sharing posts about his daughters, his son, and his mom. Despite the distance, George made a point to stay connected with his family up north as much as possible. He was especially close with his kids, who missed him dearly, and would call him frequently just to catch up and stay in touch.
As 2017 began, George's messages online began to change, and it became apparent that he was lonely and in search of romance. In one particular post, George wrote, "Dear Bae, we are too old to hide and go seek. Where are you?" Little did he know that this comment would later become very haunting, as Sarah would later claim that it was the game they were playing that led to his tragic death.
The summer of 2017 brought some joy to George's life when his kids came to visit him. They even took a trip to Universal Studios together, creating some happy memories and snapping pictures filled with smiles. But beneath those smiles, George's loneliness and his ongoing struggle with alcohol were still weighing heavily on him. That all seemed to shift, though, when he met Sarah Boone.
It was on October 20th, 2017 that George posted on Facebook that he and Sarah were in a relationship. 5 days later, George proclaimed, "To whom it may concern, my ship has come in and it's fully booked with love. I'm no longer the owner of a lonely heart." It seemed as though George had found his happily ever after with Sarah. During this time, George couldn't help but share his newfound love and happiness with the world. He actively posted on social media, particularly focusing on his artwork, as drawing had always been his passion. He even introduced a new character named Reggie, crediting Sarah with the idea for the name.
Despite how happy George and Sarah seemed, there was an uneasiness that neither of their families could shake. George's loved ones were certain that Sarah was a bad influence on him, while Sarah's family felt the same about George. The tension between the two families only made things worse, with both sides holding on to their suspicions and struggling to see eye to eye.
And to be fair, both families had reasons to be concerned. At first glance, the couple seemed to be deeply in love. But beneath the surface lurked a series of violence against one another, fueled by, we can guess it, alcohol. Throughout their time together, George and Sarah's relationship was plagued by constant arguing, and most of the time, it was petty. And then it would eventually escalate into physical altercations, which ranged from minor to very serious in nature. George was arrested at least 4 times in relation to these incidents, and Sarah always bailed him out. But it wasn't just George. Sarah was violent towards him as well. Each time it seemed to get more intense. The couple's first documented altercation occurred on July 25th, 2018, about 1 year after they met. At 1:52 a.m., an officer responded to a call from Sarah's townhouse in Winter Park. Sarah alleged that while at a bar, she had asked a guy for a cigarette, and it enraged George. He was jealous, and Sarah said their argument escalated to the point that it continued as they left and went back to the townhouse. She claimed that George dragged her upstairs and kicked her in the eye with the heel of his shoe. However, when she was offered medical attention, Sarah declined and refused to sign the DV paperwork.
When the police spoke with George, his story differed greatly from Sarah's. George told the police as he walked up the stairs to their townhome, during the heated verbal altercation, Sarah reached out, wrapped her hands around his neck, and started to choke him. He wasn't able to breathe. George told the officers that he had no choice but to kick Sarah in the face. After the altercation, George found himself answering questions from the authorities. While he admitted to hurting Sarah, he was adamant that he had no other choice and only acted in self-defense. He explained that if he hadn't stopped her from choking him, he believed he would have passed out. However, much like Sarah, George refused to seek medical treatment or sign any DV paperwork.
Exactly. They didn't want to document any of these altercations.
Right, they were fighting each other and then loving each other.
It was a toxic love.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's the epitome of the love-hate relationship. It's like they fight and then they feel guilty and they don't want the other to get in trouble, so they refuse to document or press charges.
Exactly. With no clear way to determine who the aggressor was, the officer at the scene faced a tough decision. In the end, both Sarah and George were arrested and placed in separate patrol cars. They were then taken to the Orange County Jail where charges were filed against them.
Yes, Sarah and George's altercations didn't end there, though. This incident was only the beginning of their trouble with the law. As time passed, the fighting between Sarah and George became more frequent and more intense. Their Winter Park home became a battleground, with neighbors reporting frequent arguments and altercations to the police. Despite witnessing the disturbing behavior, there were also neighbors who described Sarah as nice, comforting, and a talkative person who loved her dogs, her son, and also her live-in boyfriend, George. She would walk her two rescue dogs behind their home and wave and stop to speak with her neighbors. One of her dogs was blind and the other one was deaf, and they meant the world to Sarah. She truly loved and cared for her dogs like they were part of her family. But neighbors also saw black eyes on her, bruises and wounds right after they heard her and George fighting. So they had assumptions that Sarah was being harmed and was in a toxic and dangerous relationship.
But Sarah's unpredictable behavior often led her neighbors unsettled. She would be calm and friendly at times, but then there were moments where she would get frustrated and angry and she would yell and scream at George.
Yeah, it was kind of like a back and forth behavior where you didn't know what you were going to get. And those moments were fleeting, and Sarah and George would display kindness and affection towards one another. Her neighbors saw glimpses of a single mom who was just trying to do her best to protect herself, the ones that she loved, and figure out her path in life. But who knows if anyone could have predicted what was going to happen next. At 1:01 p.m. on February 24th, 2020, 42-year-old Sarah Boone called 911 and reported that her 42-year-old boyfriend, George Torres, was dead. We really can't tell the story of this case without playing this 911 call, so here we go.
911, what is the location of your emergency?
4748 France Court, apartment 3.
Is this a police or medical?
My boyfriend is dead.
Okay, send a line for the fire department. Do not hang up.
Fire risk. That's the location, Mercy.
Desk 32.
No, please don't leave.
4748 France Lane, apartment 3.
France Court.
All right, great. Now tell me exactly what happened there.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in his case and we were playing. And like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was dead in the suitcase, so I don't know what happened. It's like he has, like, blood coming out of his mouth, and I don't know if, like, he had, like, an aneurysm or what happened.
Right, okay, all right, okay. Listen, we're getting help out there, too. All right, okay. Okay,
now?
Okay, listen, we're on our way out there. You're at 407-716-8684. Okay, is he hanging from somewhere or what, ma'am?
No, I pulled him out of the suitcase. I tried giving him CPR.
Okay, so he was in a suitcase?
Yes, and I fell asleep.
Okay, how old is the boyfriend, ma'am? 42-year-old male. All right, listen to me. Okay, I just need to confirm this one. All right, I understand. I just need to confirm this. Is he awake at all? Is he conscious at all?
No, he's purple.
Is he breathing?
No.
All right. I need you to get him on the floor, flat on his back for me, okay?
I did. I tried giving him CPR.
All right.
I tried giving him CPR.
Yeah, okay.
But nothing happened. He's purple.
Okay, listen to me. There's a defibrillator, but I need you to get it for me, okay?
What is it?
You have an AED available?
No.
All right. Are you right by him now?
I'm sorry?
Are you right by him now?
Yes.
Okay. Lay him flat on his... Okay, ma'am, listen. Is he cold and stiff?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he's not necessarily cold, but he's stiff.
Right, okay. All right, listen to me. Listen to me. I want you to lay him flat on his back for me on the floor.
I did.
Removing the pillows, okay.
Yes, I did.
All right, okay.
He's stiff and purple.
Right, okay, listen. Okay, man, that's fine. We're still going to do compressions on him, okay? All right? Place the heel of your hand on his breastbone, right in the center of the chest, right between the nipples.
Yes.
Put your other hand on top of that hand.
Baby, I'm telling you. Just by looking at him, you can tell.
Okay.
Please! Okay, he just gurgled.
Okay. Listen to me. All right. I want you to place the heel of your hand. Okay, right between his chest, right between his breastbones.
Yes.
Put your other hand on top of that hand.
Yes.
We want to pump his chest to me hard and fast, going to this twice per second.
I'm doing it again.
Okay, no, just keep on pumping. That's all you need to do for me. Keep on pumping his chest for me. I don't need you to stop and talk or anything. I just want you to count out loud for me, okay?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. This is nothing.
Okay, ma'am, just keep on pumping his chest. That's all you need to do for me, okay?
Yes. Come on, please. Hurry up.
Okay, ma'am, they're driving here as fast as they can. Okay, don't stop to say hurry up. Just keep on pumping and counting.
I'm still doing it while I'm talking to you, okay?
Okay.
What happened? Still doing it. Like, what
All right,
happened?
just continue pumping his chest. Count on a second count with you. Okay, ma'am, just keep on pumping his chest for me, okay? They're in the parking lot. They should be up there shortly, okay?
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm still doing work, okay? 15,
Right, okay,
16,
good.
17, 18, 19.
And you found them in a suitcase, you
20,
said?
21, yes. 22, we were playing 23, last night. 24, I fell asleep. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29.
Right, just keep on pumping his chest until they take over, okay?
I am. 32.
Okay.
Please hurry.
Okay, ma'am, they're getting here as fast as they can, okay?
He's stiff and he's purple.
Okay. Okay. Keep pumping his chest for me, ma'am.
I'm still doing it, okay? Can I stop pumping now?
Let them take over for you, okay?
Wow. So I don't think I've ever heard such a strange 911 call.
And you might have caught the 911 operator asking if Sarah had a defibrillator. I mean, who actually has one of those lying around?
I don't know, because we asked that in another video. And some of the comments, though, did say that they had one on hand.
I feel like we should get a defibrillator.
Maybe we need one because I know businesses have them, but usually not homes. But despite the dispatchers urging Sarah to perform CPR, Sarah actually hesitates. And she keeps saying, she already did. And she was like screaming, saying that George just gurgled, like she got scared. So I can't imagine how scary that would be knowing that your boyfriend was dead or nearly dead. And then, of course, having to perform CPR, which sadly a lot of people are unfamiliar with. But Sarah only began the chest compressions after the dispatcher insisted that she do it. And I can't imagine not just jumping right into trying to save the person that I say I love. I definitely wouldn't have to be asked. No one would have to instruct me to do CPR.
Right. And did you hear at the end where she asked if I could stop pumping now?
Yeah, that was really cold. I mean, the entire thing seemed like a huge burden to her, like a chore. It was inconvenient for her to, do this on her dying boyfriend or her boyfriend that was laying there already dead. And of course, she screamed when the efforts elicited a postmortem gurgling sound coming from George's body. It's almost heartless, but she thought that he might still be alive. For just a moment, she hoped that he could be saved. And she was crying out, asking what happened, that they were just playing a game of hide and seek. But I could almost hear the scoff from the 911 dispatcher when he realized that these two people were in their 40s. And unfortunately, by the time police arrived, George was already dead. So what actually happened?
Well, based on the 911 call, Sarah claimed that he had been playing hide and seek. She said she fell asleep after George ended up inside the suitcase. And when she finally opened it, he was bleeding from the mouth, cold, stiff, and appeared to be deceased. Yet she insisted she had no idea how he died, even asking if it could have been some kind of aneurysm. When paramedics and police arrived on the scene, body cam footage captured Sarah explaining her version of events from the night before.
Take note of all Sarah's requests, whether it was a cigarette, water, her Dr. Pepper on the counter. She just kept asking for something, and all the while George is inside, deceased. So we're going to edit out pauses, cut out things that are not important for context, because we're not going to watch a 43-minute body cam video. We're just going to give you the gist of it.
Let's go take a look at some of that footage.
Hello there. Hi. You live here? Yes. Okay, I'll talk to you. We got to get some information from the fire department.
The property manager. I don't know if I should go tell him really quick or just so he knows what's going on.
Where is he at?
He wants that way.
Oh, don't worry about that. We'll take care of that for you, okay?
I really need something to drink.
Okay.
I got my Dr. Pepper on the counter.
Okay, we'll take care of you. Give me 1 second. You can't go back inside. What's going on? Who is he to you? Boyfriend?
Yes, for like 3.5 years.
What happened?
He and we drank last night. Like, he and I were putting a puzzle together. We've been doing some artwork together.
You are putting a puzzle together?
Yes, we have a puzzle that we started in there.
Okay.
We've been doing art, trying to take the stuff off the wall to make new art put up there, like having a good time with one another. But we're drinking. We had a bottle of wine last night.
Okay. Fine.
So then it's like, we decided to play hide and seek, right?
Okay.
So he gets in the suitcase. Okay?
Who is this guy?
That's my ex-husband, my former husband.
How did he live here with you guys?
No, I called him over here.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
So then he came over here.
Here, let's talk in private, okay?
I called you guys. I tried giving him CPR. The problem is I fell asleep.
When did you do CPR?
This morning, when I found him.
Before you called?
Yes!
It's 1 o'clock right now.
I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still. And that's when I found him, and I took him out. I tried doing CPR, and then I called him, and then I called you guys.
Did he get here before the fire department got here?
Who?
Your husband? Or your ex-husband?
Yes.
Okay. Where does he live at?
Right down the street.
Okay. So you were playing and who zipped him up?
I did, but then I fell asleep.
Okay. You're okay. I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what happened.
I fell asleep, so I don't know if he suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
What kind of medical conditions does he have?
None that I know of.
Nothing that you know of.
None
you didn't
that I
take
know
any
of.
medicine?
No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine.
Okay.
Doing puzzle artwork. Then we decided to play hide and seek. That's all that happened.
Okay.
So I don't know if he had a heart attack or what in there. Like, I don't know what happened.
So how long were you doing CPR on him prior to you calling 911? You tried that all morning?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I called him while I was doing CPR.
What time did you start? Probably, you give me a rough ballpark. Here, let me fill this deputy in, okay?
Please, may I have my Dr. Pepper? I am so cotton out right now.
Ma'am, and you can't talk to him until we get done with this, okay?
Just don't leave, okay, Brian?
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll get Lucas.
I know.
Do me a favor. Stand over there by that car. Give me 1 second. Just give us a second, okay?
Somebody else on that calibration.
It's on the counter.
I can't move anything from out of the house.
Like, I'm
Here, I want you to sit down because I don't want you passing out. This is probably a lot for you to deal with, right? Sit.
May I have some water? Just water.
I can get you some water, okay? Just, I want you not on your feet because I don't want you passing out on me.
I need water.
Okay, I'll get some for you.
222 Charlie, put you on it.
Wow. I don't know what to say other than to me, she actually does genuinely seem pretty shocked about what happened after she fell asleep, leaving him zipped in the suitcase.
Yet she does question whether he suffocated. That was one of her assumptions, along with a heart attack.
Right. So she's saying, like, could he have suffocated? It's like, I don't know. I kind of would be looking at her like cross-eyed, thinking, do you not know in your 40s that you can't do this? But let's continue. And it was also those wild eyes of hers that throw me off. And she just kept asking for that Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, Sarah's priorities in here in a serious situation. Give me that Dr. Pepper and a cigarette, stat.
Yeah, she has her priorities in order for sure. But to be fair, she admitted to drinking the night before and just recently waking up. So maybe she's parched, she's nauseous. I mean, that is a real thing. And at this point, Sarah's account of the prior evening seems believable, and she appears visibly shaken. They asked for permission for the crime scene investigators and officers to examine the home, and Sarah told them to do whatever they needed to do.
So as a part of our investigation, we obviously have to go inside the house. We have to look at things. Are you okay with us going in the house and looking at things?
Yes.
Okay. And forensics, so we have to have our forensics crime scene investigators come out. Are you also okay with them coming inside, taking photographs and
Whatever you need to do.
Okay.
When the officers do a walkthrough of the home, they find George. He's pale, almost blue. His body is sprawled out on the ground in the living room, right beside a blue suitcase. It appeared as though he had been dead for quite some time. So, of course, Sarah needed to be thoroughly and professionally questioned about what happened. But that would have to wait, because right now, the authorities had to document what they saw inside the home, the condition of George's body, and anything else of significance. Not only did they find George stiff and pale, but a small laceration was evident on his lip and what appeared to be some bruising around his eyes. He was wearing a pair of brown shorts and a dark-colored t-shirt. They had to secure one of Sarah's dogs because, unfortunately, was that he was like sniffing at George and jumping really close to his body. I don't know if it was the blind dog or the deaf one, but I can't help but feel so bad for those sweet little puppies. After this, the investigators find 2 Magnum bottles of wine in the kitchen garbage can. Now, before this case, I had never heard the word Magnum referring to wine, and I like wine, I drink wine, but these are huge bottles. It's probably because I don't have to buy them for like an entire party of people. It's like what you would take to a Thanksgiving dinner. They're 1.5 liter bottles of Woodbridge Chardonnay, 13.5% alcohol by volume, and there are 10 8-ounce glasses of wine that they would have in each bottle. That's 20 glasses of wine between 2 of these small people in one night. Wow. There were also 3 Publix supermarket receipts to match these purchases of the wine, and they actually purchased 1 Magnum the day before as well. And 2 on the Sunday the death occurred. So really they had 3 Magnums, and we'll get to that later. But this wasn't a casual night of drinking. This was major intoxication.
So after securing the dog on the patio, officers began their walkthrough of the townhome. And their first impressions, the place was pretty tidy. The living room had a vase of flowers sitting neatly on the coffee table, and there was no sign of any kind of struggle. Moving upstairs to the bedroom, it was more of the same. Sarah's bedroom was clean and organized. Even her bed looked barely slept in.
And that's kind of interesting considering she said she had just woken up not too long before she called 911. But it did look like she could have just pulled the blanket over her and gone to sleep. But it wasn't like totally unmade either. It was like when you just are drunk and you're like, I'm going to pass out, and you pull the blanket on top. But the room was tidy. All the rooms were. For someone who supposedly partied and drank a lot, I wasn't expecting her home to be that put together. It's even decorated quite nicely with butterflies making an appearance in more than one location. She must really like them. And flowers. She had several floral decorations around the home and even some Valentine's Day related decor because remember, it is February. The officers made their way into her son's room. His bed was made and the room was organized.
Once the house was cleared, the medical examiner's office arranged for George's body to be transported for an autopsy. By 4:57 p.m., Sarah was sitting in the back of a police cruiser, giving an official audio-recorded statement about what happened the night before. This time, we get a bit more detail. We won't be playing the whole audio clip, but here's what the officers learned. Around 4 p.m. the previous evening, Sunday, February 23rd, Sarah and George were hanging out at the townhouse that they shared. Sarah's 9-year-old son was with his father, Brian, at that time.
Sarah said that she and George were painting pictures, putting together a puzzle, hanging out, and drinking wine on their back patio. As the night progressed, they decided to play a game of hide and seek. Sarah thought that it was her turn to be the one that hides, so she ran upstairs and got into the shower, waiting for George. But after a while, he never came to find her, so she went back downstairs to look around for him. Once down there, Sarah said she saw George messing with an old blue zip-up suitcase that they planned to donate. It had a few items inside, and they were planning to give those away as well. But for the most part, it was empty.
According to Sarah, it was actually George's idea to get inside the suitcase. She said he was already climbing in when she came downstairs and found him. He thought it would be funny to see if he could fit, and they both apparently got a good laugh out of it. George hopped in and Sarah zipped it up.
Bear in mind, both Sarah and George were very small people. They're both about 100 pounds and only about a little over 5 feet tall. Honestly, I think they would be similar to our size. Actually smaller. Well, we'll get to that. I mean, you're probably several inches taller than George. But I think Sarah was 5'3" and George wasn't that much taller than her. And they were both very skinny. They were probably on more of a liquid diet at this point, if you know what I mean.
Sarah claimed that George willingly got into the suitcase, saying there weren't many places to hide in their small townhouse. That's what led George to climb inside to see if he could fit. She also mentioned that even though she zipped it up, there was still some space in the zipper where George could stick his fingers out. It wasn't completely closed.
Right. According to Sarah, there was like a gap in the zipper that was left unzipped where his fingers were coming through. However, since it was old, the little metal tabs that usually are on the end of a zipper and make them easy to grab onto and zip and unzip, they broke off. And in their place were only paper clips that they'd attached, like makeshift little pulls. But Sarah said she thought that George could easily get out on his own, and they were both laughing about the whole thing. But Sarah, being intoxicated, claimed that she was getting tired. And at about 12:30 a.m., she went upstairs to change and get ready for bed, with the intention of coming back downstairs first. But she also figured George would get out of the suitcase and make his way upstairs soon. However, Sarah was exhausted, And when she lay down on the bed for just a moment, she passed out for hours, not waking up until her phone was ringing over and over again from all the way downstairs where she left it. And she was in and out of sleep, but assumed that it was her ex-husband Brian calling to remind her that she needed to pick up Lucas from school that day. Because as she claimed, he was the only person who called back to back like that. And this was at about 11:30 a.m. She ignored the calls, knowing what they were about, and she went back to sleep for a little while. But eventually, Sarah got out of bed, still not realizing that George was not in bed with her and still downstairs. She did her normal morning routine upstairs until it hit her that George wasn't around. So she went downstairs to look for him.
Sarah said she assumed George had already gotten up for the day and was downstairs on the computer looking for jobs. That's how he'd been spending his time lately. At first, she wasn't concerned when she didn't see him, but as she searched the house and still couldn't find him, her worries started to grow. Panicking now, Sarah suddenly remembered the last time she'd seen George, right after he got into the suitcase. That's when the thought hit her. Could he still be inside? Sarah rushed downstairs to check, only to find George's lifeless body still in the suitcase. In that moment, she realized something terrible had happened. Overcome with emotion and fear, she made a panicked decision. Instead of immediately calling 911, she called her ex-husband Brian at exactly 12:49 p.m., saying that she didn't know what to do. It was Brian who convinced her to call 911.
I mean, on one hand, I do understand that she'd always relied on Brian ever since, her mom had died, and she was definitely someone who needed someone else's help and their guidance. But we're talking about your boyfriend lying in a suitcase, deceased. You would think you would call 911. That would be the first thing you would think about doing, because maybe he could be saved still. I mean, what do we know? But I think it's also obvious when you see a dead body, you will know it's dead. There will be signs.
There are no signs of life.
Well, sadly, that is right, but that is a sign. No sign is a sign. And we also have Brian's own account of that phone call, because he did come to the scene upon Sarah's request and was there before emergency personnel or the police were there.
So kind of tell me how you came here today, or...
Well, I had been calling...
Come down here, we got to talk. You've been calling this, your ex-wife or current wife? Yes. Okay.
No, ex-wife. We've been divorced about a year and a half. About 11:30 is when I started calling to find out, because this is supposed to be her day.
Can you give me 1764, please?
Okay.
She's generally not very good about always doing it. She tends to drink.
They called back and said she was still there, or she came back.
So I was calling to find out if she was going to be getting him or not today.
From school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I started calling like 11:30, called every half hour or so, and then
she was back inside the lobby.
Finally got a hold of her at 12:49. Which is when she told me what was going on and if I'd come over here, so I came over.
She called at 12:45?
Yeah,
okay.
Or 12:49.
12:49.
Got over here, told her she needed to call 911, get somebody over here, and then basically she said she needed to go outside, have a drink and a cigarette. I walked back out the house because I didn't really want to be
Who called?
there.
Did you call or did she call?
Well, I called. She called me back when I was on my way to make sure I was coming over. But I called her initially.
Give me 1 second, okay? Okay, so she called. You get over here.
I called her first.
Okay.
Trying to find out if she's going to get Lucas. That's when she told me everything was going on. I got my stuff together, put the puppy up in his crate. When I was starting to drive over here is when she called me to make sure I was coming, and then I got over here right after
Did you
that.
Go inside and see, and then?
I walked inside the front.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see the little front tile area.
Come on, step this way. Mm-hmm.
I saw legs. I just didn't really want to be in there around it, so I told her.
Well, just for the sake of the crime scene, I want to know if I were to find your footprint, it would be because you went this far into the house. So did you actually make entry past the threshold?
I don't think I ever made it to the carpet. I think it was just in that. I've been over here before.
Right,
so,
right. Yeah.
But no, I don't think I stepped past that tile area.
Okay. So
I don't think I touched doorknob. I don't think I touched anything in the kitchen. I don't know if that really matters.
Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of what you have. Well, sit tight for us. We're going to make a few phone calls, and then we'll go from there. Do you know if he has any medical issues, or?
I don't.
Okay, but you've met him before?
I've met him before, yes.
Okay.
Yes. They've got a whole fun history.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, you guys have called over here quite a few times.
For the two of them?
Yeah, he's been arrested, like, I think 5 times for violence against her, so.
Really? Okay, I'm not familiar with, I haven't been here personally. So they have
he's currently on parole because of it, so.
Because of domestic violence with her?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, from last time. He got, whatever it's called, like retrial something or other. He had to go to a domestic violence class.
Okay.
I know he was doing it at a parole officer, stuff like that. But I mean, like, every time she'd have him arrested, the next day she was trying to get him bailed out of jail. So I don't know what it is.
I hope you could hear that. I'm sorry for the lawn maintenance that was going on in the background, but Brian confirmed that he had been calling Sarah, and finally she called him back and told him what was going on, that she thought that George was dead and to come quickly, which he did. He only lived a few minutes away. The officer wanted to make sure that he didn't disrupt the scene or that, his footprints wouldn't be found inside or fingerprints because he went in there. But he confirmed, yes, I did, but I hardly went through the threshold, and that he'd been there many times before. So, kind of getting scared at this point because there's a deceased person inside. He also mentioned that it wasn't unusual for police to be called out there for both of them fighting with each other, and that George was actually on parole for one of these incidents, but that Sarah kept bailing him out.
During her interview, Sarah said she initially assumed George had passed out from being intoxicated. She admitted that she had no idea what happened during the night, speculating that his recent weight loss and declining health could have played a role. Sarah was adamant that she never intended to harm him, and she claimed immediately trying CPR on him. However, her reaction to the gurgling sounds that George made during the 911 call told a different story. That reaction raised red flags, with the officers making them suspect that Sarah wasn't being entirely honest about what happened.
Yeah, and the authorities were not convinced that this was how the story went.
Even though it's normal for a deceased person to make those sounds during CPR because of the air or fluid caught in their airway, the way Sarah reacted made it seem like she might have lied about when she found George and whether she actually tried to help him or not. That was before the dispatcher told her to.
Plus, she also acted as though they didn't drink that much, that they just shared some wine. And again, she was reiterating that it was all fun and games. You know how they say it's all fun and games.
Until someone gets hurt.
Yeah.
So, you've had a second to kind of collect yourself. Tell it to me again. You guys were playing last night, drinking a bottle of wine.
Putting puzzles together, doing artwork.
Doing puzzles, artwork. Okay.
Had a bottle of wine and then decided to play hide and seek. So he gets,
what time was that? Do you remember?
I mean, I know that I was in bed probably by 12:30.
Okay.
Well,
so
I went upstairs at least, and I fell asleep.
Okay.
Forgetting that he was in the suitcase.
So you guys were playing the hide and go seek?
Yes.
And at some point you put him in the suitcase?
No, he got in the suitcase. So he thought it would be funny to be put in the suitcase. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to joke with you and I'll zip you up and make him, squirm a little bit, whatever it is. But then I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
Where was the suitcase?
Right where it is.
In it. Right down there?
Yes.
You zipped him in there?
Yes.
Thought he would be funny, a little
joke.
It
was. We both were laughing about it. Okay. And then I fell asleep.
Where did you fall asleep at?
Upstairs.
In your bedroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally forgetting that he was in the suitcase still.
Okay. And then you came back downstairs?
This morning? Or this afternoon, yes, when I got up.
What time?
12:30-ish. I was awake, but I totally forgot that he was in the suitcase. He can tell you there's a lot of things that we have been going.
Yeah, he did tell me.
Like all that good stuff. So I just totally forgot.
So you began to do CPR on him?
Yes. Yes.
About what time this morning did you start doing that CPR?
No, it was the afternoon. It was afternoon because I was awake. But then I finally decided to come downstairs at 12:30-ish, whatever it is. And then I was like, I forgot he was in the suitcase. And he wasn't moving. Nothing was happening. So I unzipped him, took him out and started doing CPR on him. He was on his way over here. I called you when he got here.
Once he got here, you called us?
Yes.
Okay.
And air was coming out and he was gurgling, but I could just tell by looking at him.
But you knew how to do CPR. You were doing that on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the person that was on the phone with me also, I counted with him doing.
And he's got no medical? He doesn't take any medication?
I don't know. I don't know medical-wise. I know he doesn't take any medications whatsoever.
Okay.
The only thing, like I said, I don't know if alcohol had something to do with it, but we had a bottle of wine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, she was basically saying she started CPR when she was on the 911 call because she said afternoon. And she had to have been way more intoxicated because of what happened next. She forgot there was something very incriminating on her phone. So there was Sarah willingly allowing the police to confiscate her cell phone, and it was what they discovered on that device that was so shocking. I think it's what made this case get a lot of attention to begin with because it is that crazy. The content they found on that phone included 2 videos recorded the night before. The first one lasted for about 2 minutes, and it was taken at 11:12 p.m. That video depicted a shocking scene. It showed George trapped inside of a suitcase, which was rolled over so the top portion was on the ground, and he's desperately screaming Sarah's name, calling out to her to please let him out. Sarah appeared indifferent and even mocked George. She was also slurring her words, and some of them you can barely even make out. But it's clear that throughout this video, Sarah can be heard laughing, displaying a lack of concern for George's well-being, and we're going to play this video for you in just a moment. I want you to watch closely because you can see George using his body from the inside to try to lift that suitcase or maneuver himself in a position that would allow him to get out, but he can't.
As the video footage continues, George's pleas become more desperate. He kept saying he was losing air and couldn't breathe. But Sarah, slurring her words, responded with, "For everything you've ever done to me," followed by "F you." George kept calling out, "Sarah, Sarah," but she called him stupid and repeated, "F you."
Yeah, she was saying the real words. We're going to have to bleep some of them out because they're bad. But she even said the throwback phrase, "That's my name, don't wear it out." It's like chilling. I hadn't heard that in a really long time. And all the while, George is clearly in distress. He's begging to be let out. He just kept saying, "Babe, I can't effing breathe." However, Sarah's response is only to further escalate the situation. She responded by telling him, "Yeah, that's what you do when you choke me," followed by a rude remark about George cheating on her. And when he couldn't breathe, she responded with, "That's on you," as though this was some sort of punishment. So let's take a look and listen.
"Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
F*** you.
Sarah.
F*** you.
Sarah.
Stupid.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it out.
Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
Sarah. 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 Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real or ransom. Might want to get video for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real or ransom.
Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you ching on me.
Sarah.
You.
I can't breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the f*** up.
Shh. This video was a shocking discovery that added a whole new layer to the investigation. In the footage, you can clearly see that George's suitcase was positioned face down, making it nearly impossible for him to escape.
Exactly. And he couldn't have gotten into that suitcase that way, so somehow it was flipped over. It doesn't look like he would have been able to flip the suitcase back over or even flip it to where it is. So that means Sarah flipped it on its front.
The second video was similar, with George calling out to Sarah, but it was only 22 seconds long, and as far as I know, it was never released. According to one of the affidavits, it showed the suitcase face up this time and moved to the left side of the living room, where it was eventually found. These videos really don't paint Sarah in a good light at all.
They showed a clip of the 22-second video at trial just for a second, but it was never released publicly. But it was taken after the other video. So now they know it has been flipped back over by Sarah, because who else is there, and moved to where it was eventually found. I think she already knew things were not looking good for her, even without being aware that she captured these videos while heavily intoxicated. Because when she was speaking with investigators and realized George's family would be notified of his death, soon she was scared for her own life. She said that they never liked her, that they called her the blue-eyed white devil, and they were going to think that she murdered George and they were going to kill her. So let's listen.
He said that I needed to tell you guys about his family. Like, who do I talk to about that?
We're gonna do that once we walk through and see. Yeah, we're
not
gonna.
going anywhere. We're gonna
I'm
be
just
here for a
telling you,
while.
like,
Yeah, this is gonna be a while.
I'm afraid for my life. I want you to know that. I am
Why
afraid
is that?
for my life. His family have never liked me. I'm the blue-eyed white devil, is what they call me. So they've never liked me. They've never taken me in. They've never accepted me. I'll put it that way.
Have you called any of them?
We talked to his daughters yesterday.
No, I mean, like, about this. Does anyone know? Okay.
That's
so no one's gonna know until we will be making that notification. So
they're gonna kill me.
Okay.
Do
Well,
they live local?
Yes, they're down the road. They're going to kill me. His kids are going to kill me in Philadelphia. They're going to kill me. This was not intentional.
Okay.
And they're not going to understand that. They're not going to accept it.
we're gonna do a thorough investigation, and we will definitely make sure that you don't feel scared when we leave here. Okay.
When my 9-year-old.
Well, he's at school, or he's with your husband.
I know. Well,
ex-husband.
Your husband said that, or your ex-husband said he made arrangements for your 9-year-old to be picked up.
So just give us a little bit more time. Like I said, I need to go and do that, and he's gonna go do what he needs to do.
But do you guys tell his family, like, today or after
Yes,
tomorrow?
We have to. It's the
By
law.
we have to go and make contact with your family.
Yeah.
They have to be notified.
Once our investigation is pretty much complete here, once we leave here, we will be going to.
But again, you'll know. I'm not going to just go and do it without you knowing. You'll know. We'll talk to you prior to doing anything like that.
But I understand what you guys and how you do it, and, you know, so, but, like, what do you just tell him? What do you tell his parents? Like, what's the reason?
He passed away.
We tell them what we know at that point.
Yeah.
We tell them the truth.
And that we're going to be waiting for the autopsy results, and I will be at the autopsy in the morning, and hopefully the doctor will be able to give me some of what they think and see.
Yeah. We'll give them their number. They can contact them and get it from them.
But yeah, they're gonna know what we're here, what we're investigating, and that
they're gonna think I killed him.
Why would they think that?
They always have said that. They've always have said that.
What have they
I
said?
told you it's because I'm the blue-eyed white dragon. That's what they call me. Because they don't want him with me. So he's basically just not really been around his family because he chooses me over them. Even after I've encouraged him numerous times to go over there and see his family. They have never accepted me, and they have always been really unforgiving, I'll say that, where they've never accepted me, and everybody in his family has threatened to kick my ass, so especially his sister. He had to pull her off me one time.
Do you have somewhere safe that you can go tonight?
Both my parents are deceased, my grandparents are deceased, my aunt and uncle are deceased. I got nobody. I have a brother that's in the Marines, and I've got another one that's in jail.
Unless the brother that's Marines, is he local?
No. Well, he in Altamont, but I think he's doing whatever Marine thing he's doing. But the only way...
Your phone's inside, correct?
Yes.
Does he have a phone?
No.
He doesn't have a phone?
He used my phone.
He uses your phone?
Yeah, we did it
share
together.
phone?
So, the only place I could go is over to Brian's house. So, I don't think he'll have a problem with it.
Okay.
So...
Well, like I said, we're not going to leave here. If you do not feel safe, we are not going to leave here with you not feeling safe, because then we're liable.
And then his ex-wife in Philadelphia?
Well, she's in Philadelphia, but yes.
There's going to be a funeral.
Right.
Sarah was clearly terrified about how George's family would react once they found out he was dead and learn about all the details of the investigation that were quickly piling up. She decided to stay with her ex-husband until she could figure out a better plan. But soon she found herself sitting in an interview room in the Orange County Sheriff's Office, being confronted with the autopsy results. The autopsy had been conducted the very next day, and by that time, investigators had already spoken with several neighbors, George's family members, and even the property manager. The autopsy findings backed up the stories of frequent alcohol-fueled fights that seemed to define Sarah and George's relationship. The property manager even recalled Sarah coming into the office once bruised, asking about how to remove George from the lease. But over time, she noticed George had his own bruises, which looked like defensive injuries. She believed their constant drinking fueled his cycle of violent arguments. Sarah would frequently call the police, but it was usually George who ended up being arrested. George's family accused Sarah of isolating him from them and controlling when and if he could reach out. The two shared a single cell phone, which Sarah owned, and George had to ask her permission to use it. According to his family, Sarah rarely gave him that permission.
He could not unlock the phone. He had to have her use her face to unlock it. And sometimes he would be like, Sarah, unlock the phone, and try to put it on her face while she was cooking and stuff. That came out at trial. But there was also information gathered of Sarah's injuries and one trip to the hospital after she had cooked them a steak dinner. They had been drinking that night. She brought the meal up to the bedroom and set up a movie for them to watch. And when George came up to the room, he was heavily intoxicated. So much so, she said she didn't even recognize him. He was acting erratic, he was rude, he was cursing her out because the steak wasn't to his liking. He then began making comments that all he wanted to do was F her. But the way he was saying it upset Sarah. He was angry and she was offended. When she went to leave, she said that he said, "You're not going anywhere," and took the knife from the dinner and stabbed her in the leg. Now, this was a serious injury, and he really did stab her in the leg. She began bleeding profusely. They could not stop the blood, and she was begging to go to the hospital, but he was telling her she couldn't go, and he took her car keys. He took her phone so she couldn't leave or call for help.
He also begged her not to call the police.
Right. He did not want to be arrested. And her lips were then turning blue. She was feeling lightheaded. And she told George that she was going to die. And finally, he agreed to take her to the hospital only if she made up a story at the hospital so that he wouldn't go to jail. So she told the doctors they were drunk and sword fighting, and he accidentally stabbed her in the leg. She did require stitches, and the wound was at least an inch long, and I don't know how deep, but it also required multiple surgeries due to complications. She couldn't put weight on it, so it had to go into somewhat of a cast. So there was evidence of violence on both sides of this relationship. But doesn't it sound familiar? Last time she says, "Oh, we're sword fighting." This time she says, "We're playing hide and seek." It seems like she's used to making up stories.
Right. And you might have heard that Sarah mentioned her brother was in jail too. She brought it up outside her townhome when they asked if she had someone to stay with. Unfortunately, for the Powelson family, it seems that Sarah wasn't the only one with a troubled past. Her older brother, John Tyler Paulson, who went by Tyler, is a registered SO. Tyler is currently incarcerated, and according to the Orange County Clerk's Office, he was charged in 2011 with 5 counts, including interference with custody, showing obscene material to a minor, sheltering an unmarried minor, causing a child to commit an act of delinquency, and resisting an officer without violence. 1 year later, in 2012, Tyler was charged with an additional count of sex act with a 16 and 17-year-old child. This incident occurred when Tyler was in his mid-30s. The details of the incident and the nature of the relationship between Tyler and the children involved are not clear. But what is clear is the investigators were uncovering a lot more information on both sides of George's and Sarah's.
Right. And let me explain what the autopsy report stated. George had sustained injuries in the form of long scratches to his mid-upper back, a large scratch to the back of his neck, bruises to his left shoulder. He also had a left skull and left forehead contusion, which were from blunt force trauma after being hit with an object or being slammed into the ground or a wall, something hard. And he also had a cut on his busted lip. Armed with this evidence, the detectives investigating the death confronted Sarah a second time, now being recorded in an interview room. She adamantly denied touching George. She said that they did not get into a physical altercation that night. She acted very surprised about the injuries, but then offered explanations for each of them. She described George as clumsy, attributing his bruises and scratches to accidents like falling or bumping into walls. However, police noted that his injuries were recent, occurring just hours before his death, and they wanted her to focus on just Sunday night. Sarah then claimed the scratches might have happened during an intimate moment in bed together. This failed to explain the extensive bruising on his face, his head, and his back.
This morning we went to his autopsy. and we were informed of some injuries that he has by the doctor. So so he's got scratch marks to his back.
I know what that's from.
Okay. And it's called a contusion. Do you know what a contusion is? So, like, basically you're getting hit, and then, you get a mark from it. You'll get bruising. Like, someone hit you or something like that. It's called a contusion. So he had some injuries to his left shoulder. He had a cut near his, lip. We could see his mouth was a little
I haven't laid a
swollen.
hand on him.
Okay.
He fell off my son's bike.
Okay.
So I don't know. And he's notorious for running into the wall or the hall tree.
Okay.
So
Okay. What about the scratches? Because there's also sex?
Yes.
Okay. Because there's also a scratch on the back of his neck, kind of going, but it's going straight across.
I have no idea what that's from.
And they're all recent. They occurred recently. It wasn't something that occurred post or that occurred a week ago or 2 days ago, 3 days ago. They definitely occurred, the night leading up to when he was.
In all honesty, we have not gotten into it.
Okay.
That's why, the only thing I thought you guys were going to ask me about, which I was going to be honest with you anyway, are the scratch marks on his back.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, I have no idea what it is. No idea what it is. Nonetheless, I've had my son over the house, too, so...
Well, your son was there when? When was he last there?
Oh, gosh.
My understanding he was there, last Tuesday?
I don't know if it was Tuesday, but yes, he was there last week, so...
Well, we're talking about Sunday.
Yeah.
We're just talking about what occurred Sunday. Because, like I said, the injuries they occurred within that time period.
So you're talking about day before yesterday?
Sunday leading into Monday. You called us yesterday at 1, but the incident, you guys were painting and stuff the night prior.
Correct.
So we're talking about Sunday and then into Monday.
I'm thoroughly confused because we had a good time sitting on the back porch having wine and smoking a couple of cigarettes and then decided to go inside and literally paint, do puzzles, and play and listen to music. That's why nobody got out of sorts. This is what's mind-blowing to me. I have no clue. Nobody laid a hand on anybody.
He also had, on the left side of his forehead, he had basically bruising, and on his head and his skull.
I have no idea.
As if something hit him.
I
considered
have not
force
touched him.
trauma.
I have not touched him. I have not touched him.
Then how would you get those injuries?
Tell me and we'll both know. I have not touched him.
Yesterday, when we took photographs of your overall body, and they did the buccal swabs, did they go under your fingernails?
No.
Okay. Are you willing to let us
Absolutely
swab underneath your fingernails?
Go for it. And I don't want to seem out of sorts, but I have no idea. We had a good day.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good day. We've had good days lately, even considering everything that's going on with our jobs and life in general and ex-wives and everything. It's been good. I don't even know where this is coming from.
Yeah,
I don't
you said
even
the
know.
last physical was probably, you said, I think, a month ago? Where you got the injury, right? You said that was a month ago?
I'll say a few weeks, give or take, yeah.
A few weeks? That was the last, physical altercation between the two of you? Yeah, you said a month ago he hit you with a curtain rod.
Yeah, with a curtain rod. That's why I can't believe you guys didn't take that either.
So, of course, Sarah is highlighting George's issues and violent behavior.
Over the past 2 days since her first interview, Sarah repeatedly insisted that they hadn't been heavily drinking that night, portraying a picture of a quiet evening spent doing some crafts and sharing a single bottle of wine. But as the time went on, her story began to change. She started claiming that George was the one who drank excessively, often to the point of passing out, while she hated being intoxicated and preferred to stay in control. Her narrative eventually shifted again, portraying George as a violent alcoholic and herself as someone who felt responsible for helping him.
Yeah, air quotes. helping him.
She went from describing a peaceful evening to portraying George as a volatile person she stayed with in hopes of fixing his problems. When asked why she stayed with him despite everything, she simply said, "Because I really loved him."
And I have to admit, I do have a heart, and I did get sad when she said that. Not because I feel bad for her necessarily, but I'm just sad that situations like this actually exist. These toxic relationships are real, and they're not that uncommon. And that does break my heart.
Then why are you still with him?
Everybody asks me that. When I tell you guys this, I really love him. Like I do. And I feel like I can help him. Like I feel like I could help him, which I did, because he came a really long way from where he was in Philadelphia to moving back to here and to dealing with everything else that he's been dealing with. I've really helped him. I've bailed him out of jail, 3 times. I've gone to every single hearing and every single arraignment, everything that I did for him. Gone to see all his public defenders, go to the state. I've gone to the state. I did everything for him because I'm trying to help him, because I had hope in him. And he was trying. He was really trying. And then he starts to think about things, and I think he gets overwhelmed, and then it's like, the next thing I know, he's drinking. So it's like, oh man, I know where this is going to go, so I'm going to go upstairs and read a book. Or I'm going to go for a bike ride, or I'm going to do something else. Where I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink. The occasional wine, whatever, or if it's a weekend, that's when you have a good time. You don't have to wake up the next day. I have to wake up the next day and do things. I have to tend to Lucas. I have to take him to school. I have all this stuff to do. He doesn't know how to, I guess, maintain himself, where I can do 50 things at once and still know the 50 things more prior that I need to get done. He can't process like that. He didn't process like that, so he would literally, not literally, but have smoke coming out of his ears. So the next thing you know, he doesn't want to deal with it. I'm going to go get something to drink.
Notice how she talked as though he was still alive in the present tense. I found that to be interesting, but it was probably because this is shocking that he's dead, and she may have not processed it yet. But she's almost blaming George for his own death, and she's explaining how broken this man is. And then she asks the detectives, "Have you looked through my phone?" Because she believed that what was on her phone would actually exonerate her, prove what an unhinged person George was. She mentioned she had been documenting everything. Bloody fingers, split forehead, that George had struck her in the nose, and the stab wound to her leg. Instead, as we know, what was on her phone revealed a darker narrative about that evening that ended in George's suffocation.
I don't know if you all have looked through my phone yet and seen any of the pictures and the videos that I have taken. And at one point, I started documenting everything.
Okay.
So you all will see in my pictures bloody fingers, split forehead. He split my nose. I've got this.
Right.
I don't know if Brian told you about it, where I had to have I had one really bad surgery, but then it got really, 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 really bad, where I had to go 4 or 5 more times afterwards for them to tend to it, from him poking me in the back of the leg.
At this point, Sarah had no idea those incriminating videos were on her phone. About 30 minutes into the interview, the investigators asked if she remembered taking any photos or videos that night. Sarah said she didn't remember. That's when they started playing the video. It begins with George yelling her name and saying he can't breathe. Sarah barely watched a few seconds before asking how long the video was. She said she didn't know how much she could take, that they were scaring her. She even mentioned being prone to throwing up and not being able to sleep, and asked if she really had to watch it. The investigators replied with, "Well, we can take it at face value or you can explain it."
Do you remember making any videos or maybe having any photos, videos that you remember doing on your phone on Sunday?
No.
No?
I think I took a picture of a dog.
Okay. But your phone is password protected, you have the password, he has the facial recognition, so it's not like someone else could be on your phone.
No, I have both.
But you have the face and the password?
Yes.
Yeah, but he only has the face, correct?
No.
To be able to get onto your phone, you told me that he looks at the phone.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought you were asking if I did. Yes, it's me.
Okay. Does he have access to your phone? Because you said it's a shared phone. Okay, how does he have access?
Sarah, can I borrow your phone? Yeah, it's right there on the kitchen counter.
Okay, but how does he get into it? Because it's password protected.
He'll come and get it to me, and I'll just do the face thing. Where sometimes, too, like, he'll joke with me and say, okay, I need to borrow your phone. And he'll hold it while I'm cooking or doing something, do the facial recognition.
Okay, so he doesn't know the password, and he doesn't have the facial recognition.
No.
But he is the only other person that would use your phone, I'm assuming, other than...
Well, Lucas.
Right. But Lucas wasn't there Sunday. Right. So, to your recollection, no videos on Sunday?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, I maybe took a picture of them, the two of Tess and
the dogs,
and George, and had them dancing. But I mean, it's just Tess.
Mhm. Okay. So I have something that I want to show you that we found, and it was from your phone.
Do I have to watch this? I continuously throw up. I don't sleep. I don't want to see it, if that's okay.
It's on your phone, and you can either explain it or we take it for what it is.
Yeah. We're just trying to give you the opportunity to tell us what's going on. That's it.
It's that long?
2 minutes.
No.
For everything you've done to me. For everything you've done to me. Fuck you.
And that's you, your voice.
Stupid. Sarah. That's my name. Don't wear it up. Sarah, I can't fucking breathe it. Sarah. Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me. Sarah. Sarah.
I don't want to watch it, please. Okay.
Sarah only made it halfway through the 2-minute video before she begged the detectives to stop playing the clip. She said it made her sick and that she wasn't going to be able to sleep that night. But they had seen enough and even showed her that the suitcase had been moved from the upside down position to right side up. And that's when she admitted to flipping it over, insinuating, though, it was to help him get out. Sarah finally catches on that the detectives are pointing the finger at her being culpable for George's death. And at this point, she was like, are you trying to say that I was like, good, he's in the suitcase, I'm going to go leave him in there and go upstairs to sleep? Because that's not what happened. But isn't it?
That they had done this.
Done what?
Zipped somebody in a suitcase and went up and went to bed.
Do you all not think, so you all think that it's like, oh good, I got him in there, now I'm going to go to sleep? Is that what you guys are trying to assume? Or trying to
the video is very portraying of the opposite of what you told us.
No.
It is not leading up, it is not matching what statement you gave us in the car.
So,
and that's why we want to know.
And I don't remember doing those.
The injuries are not consistent with what you've told us. So we have a lot of inconsistencies, and this video explains itself. It really, truly does.
You don't think that I have thought about that?
Thought about the video or thought about...
But no, again, if you don't mind, please. So you all are assuming that it's like, oh, good, I got him in there, now I'm going to go to sleep? Is that what you all are assuming?
Well, it's not an assumption when that's what you told us, so that happened.
That's what happened.
After this, they showed Sarah the suitcase from different angles. Remember, there were 2 videos, and in neither one was it clear where the so-called hole was that George could have used to unzip himself. Despite this, Sarah kept insisting that she had only used 2 fingers to easily open it and claimed she didn't understand why he couldn't have done the same. She argued that it was just a coincidence that in both videos, the area where the zipper was supposedly undone wasn't visible.
It just happened to be that whenever I was videotaping or doing whatever else it was, just happened to not have that in it.
Okay. And you also, in the video, you can't see any holes. There's nowhere in that where the zipper separates and you can see a hole. If there's a hole, he's pushing on it, begging you to get out.
Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
We should probably see that hole that
He
you're
essentially
talking
would have
about.
been able to get out.
Huh.
Alcohol.
Based off what you're telling us, he should have been able to get out.
Okay.
But the video shows him attempting to get out, begging to get out, and he can't. So that's just what we're trying to figure out. I don't know if maybe you had too much to drink, you zipped it up all the way, and then,
I did not zip it up all the way.
Okay, well.
I did not zip it up all the way. This is horrific, okay? Horrific.
It is terrible.
Yeah, so
horrific. I don't think I'll ever be right because of this. Ever be right. Dealing with everything else that I have in my life, personally. And then this, whom I loved, it was not intentional.
Sarah seemed really shocked that they didn't view her as a victim.
Not like all those times before, but I'm going to say something and I hope it doesn't upset anyone, but someone has to kind of play devil's advocate here, right? I truly don't think this woman intended to kill George going into that night. I really do not think that, but I think it's true. They were messing around like two drunken idiots and he got into that suitcase as a joke. But then things changed. And in Florida law and many other states, actual intent can be in the blink of an eye. When she left that room with him begging for air, she did so intentionally. She moved her legs and walked away. And even though she may not have intended to kill him, she voluntarily left a situation that she helped create. And even if it was a joke, she should have reasonably known that it could cause death or serious bodily harm. So that's intent. That's the intent, and that's what detectives are seeing. And she also voluntarily drank. And intoxication is not an excuse. It can definitely mitigate some factors, sure, but she was not forced to drink anything that night. I just had to share that because I think she's a mixture of genuinely shocked that this had happened and also conniving and manipulative. That's who she is. She's used to talking her way out of these things, especially at this point when she knows it's not looking good for her.
Right, as you said, she does look shocked, but let's be real, she, as you said, made that choice to drink. And I'm guessing that this wasn't the first time she's woken up after a night like this saying, I did what last night? And having those conversations, God, I can't remember anything.
Right, this is definitely not the first time she can't remember something.
And she's walking away while George begged for air. That shows a deliberate choice, and her drinking was very much voluntary.
It was.
As she's now admitting that it was the alcohol, which could very well be true, that in any other situation she wouldn't have fallen asleep and forgotten George was downstairs.
Which I do think makes sense. It's not an excuse, but it is a reason that this probably happened. I think she was mad at him for past infractions, like cheating, which, by the way, was him actually looking at adult videos on her phone that she found. That was him cheating. But you know what? Everyone has different boundaries. And if you feel like that is cheating in a relationship, you have every right to say, like, I feel like that's cheating. He was also flirting with someone on Facebook. And, that was when they were like on an off moment in the relationship. So maybe Sarah, thinking that that was true for her. And when she said F you to him and cussed him out in that moment, he's in the suitcase. And because she now had the upper hand and he couldn't run away, she was able to have him listen. Her reasoning for not letting him out was that she thought he was a boy crying wolf and that he could get out by himself.
At one point, Sarah admits that she was essentially punishing George, saying she thought she'd let him sit there for 5 minutes, but when investigators compared the timestamps from the two videos, they pointed out that she already left him there for 11 minutes without helping. As they pushed her to confront this, Sarah grew increasingly defensive, angrily insisting that this was horrific and not what she intended, repeating that now it's all on her. Her voice got louder and louder, almost screaming at the investigators.
Number one, I had no idea it was going to end like that.
Okay.
Number one.
Okay.
Number two, just, you know what? I'll give you 5 minutes or so in there. I'll give you 5 minutes or so.
5 minutes for what?
Well, based off the video, one video is at 11:12 and the next one's at 11:23, so you actually gave him at least 11 minutes per video recording. So my thing is, when it stopped, he asked multiple times, I mean, why? Why did you not let him out? It's just a simple question.
To be honest with you, I don't know.
Were you punishing him?
No. Just.
Well, that's what you're saying in the video.
This is what you get. This is what you make me feel like.
See, and then it's all backfired on me. Like, it's all backfired on me. And I understand the severity of this.
Yeah, he's dead.
It's awful, I know.
Okay.
It's awful. And I will tell you both this right now, too. I will never drink alcohol again.
Okay.
Like, I will would never drink alcohol again. I don't care what it is in any way, shape, or form.
But let's get back to this. What was the reason for leaving him when he's begging to be let out? I don't understand that.
What I have a feeling was, and again, it's the whole time frame thing. You all.
I'm not asking a time frame. I don't care about a time frame. He's in the bag saying,
my God.
And you say, fuck you.
When he, for the whole few minutes that he was in there,
minimum 11, but yes, go ahead. It's a few. 11 minimum.
For one video.
Well, in between the two videos.
Between the two
minutes.
videos? Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the question again?
When he's begging for his life, telling you he can't breathe, let me out, and you say, fuck you, why don't you just let him out? What are you trying to prove to him? There was obviously something in your head that you were thinking of when he was asking to be let out, and you're like,
again, it's the boy calling wolf.
Okay, but where does this game end? You say this is a game, you got somebody in there.
Obviously, the wrong way.
So what was your intention for leaving him in there?
And it's not fair. It is not fair. You guys are trying to, again, he's in there. Night, night.
That's what happened.
She also kept saying, you guys are killing me right now. And that phrase to me was so cringy considering what happened. It's just like when Stephen Stearns in the Madeline Soto case kept saying that he was just killing time when he was driving around and disposing of this little girl's remains.
Sarah seemed to believe that she could just talk her way out of it, spitting herself as the victim and trying to make the investigators see her in that light again. In all her explanations, she painted herself as the hero, the rescuer, the helpful one with nothing but good intentions. She even shifted the focus to George's ex-wife, calling her a crazy monster for asking for child support, despite the fact that neither Sarah nor George were employed at that time. They were living off of Sarah's child support from Brian, with George only occasionally bringing in money from odd jobs. Sarah became extremely defensive during the interview, accusing the detectives of manufacturing evidence against her, trying to push back everything they presented.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Manufacturing evidence. It's like, if you watch this whole, later, we're going to link the whole interview below if you want to watch the 2-hour interview, because I've watched it multiple times and watched a trial, and I can see something new every single time I watch it. And I'm like, is she serious? She's bold. I will say that. When all the while they were like, no, you're looking at the video that you recorded. That's what we're using as evidence right now. Yet Sarah was feeling persecuted, and she believed the police were trying to intentionally make her look bad or misconstrue the evidence in a way that made her look guilty. Sarah complained of being victimized by the investigators. She said they were making her out to be a person that she was not. But then they asked her a really good question. They said, was it us or the alcohol that made you into a different person? So let's play that clip.
Y'all are making me out to be a person that I'm not. Or will I ever be.
Or are you a different person when you're drunk?
People have different personalities after they consume alcohol.
It depends. Because
you're sober now, so sober you.
Nice
What about drunk you?
It's both of us. It's both of us. And it's not fair that you all are assuming that the marks that he has on him are from me.
We asked you where they came from.
I have no idea.
Well, nobody else was there, so nobody else was there.
I have no idea. I swear I did not lay a hand on him.
Okay. You just zipped them in the bag.
Nor he.
You just zipped them in the bag. And then you flipped the bag around several times.
I didn't do that intentionally.
You didn't intentionally flip the bag around?
No. Why would I do that?
Well, you
Good
told
question.
us
You did.
When he was upside down.
Right.
Well, you had to put him upside down.
You can't get in a suitcase upside down because
Oh my gosh.
when you put the stuff in where his body was.
That's the unfortunate thing too, is nobody else was there. That's the
We have a
unfortunate
video
thing.
showing the suitcase in several different positions. So it shows, one, like she just said, it had to have been on its back with the lid open for him to get in there, for you to zip it up. Then it shows it on the other side with him in it, so you had to flip it to there. Then there's another video where it's on his back again, so you had to flip it to
I'm
there.
leaving it like this, please. I'm leaving it like this. I did not intentionally do this. No malicious content or effort was towards this. No malicious.
I would say
point of
does
the
that
video.
help you sleep, but you're not sleeping.
The investigators are definitely playing bad cop right now, really pressing her and pushing her buttons. It's clear that they're trying to get her to break under the pressure.
Exactly. And I don't understand why people agree to talk without an attorney to begin with, because we have the right to remain silent. And when they were reading her Miranda warnings and stuff, she was like, and like just doing stuff. And I'm like, and then at the very end, they're like, do you understand what we just read to you? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't think people, they've heard it so many times that they don't realize that it's our rights. They're telling you what your rights are.
Right.
She tried to redeem herself by even mentioning that George's probation officer had once praised her in a lengthy phone call for her supporting his attendance at DV intervention classes that he had to go to because of her. In Sarah's narrative, she was always a selfless saint, putting up with so much to help George at her own expense. Throughout the interview, her voice, her words, and body language showed a striking lack of remorse or even accountability of any kind. Detectives questioned Sarah about the supposed game they were playing of hide and seek, asking her endgame and why she taunted George. These were logical questions, and they were left without any real answers. She insisted their questions weren't fair. She loved that. She loved saying, like, it's not fair. It's like a child. Stating that losing her boyfriend was punishment enough. At one point, she even protested that the entire interrogation process was unfair to her. She said it was unfair, like I said, multiple times. But what's unfair is that George was begging for his life and to be able to be freed. And she just sat there and did nothing. They even questioned Sarah about whether she would let her own son out of a suitcase if he was begging. And she admitted she would never let her 9-year-old get into a suitcase and that George got in by himself. But I think that's a really good point. I think if her son was crying to be released, she would have let him out.
As the interview came to a close, Sarah pulled out a piece of paper with a list of questions that she wanted answered. Her biggest concern was whether she'd get her phone and her laptop back that day. The detectives told her that she wouldn't. After that, her focus shifted to how everyone in George's life would be notified, his probation officer, his DV class instructor, and so on. The detectives made it clear that their only legal responsibility was to notify George's next of kin.
The female investigator was ruthless in this interview. She's like, why does it matter? And Sarah was perplexed. She's like, well, because these are nice people who were helping George. Shouldn't someone let them know that he's dead? She was also concerned about George's family and what the police were telling them about his cause of death. She wanted to know how she could get information about George's funeral, and she was fixated on retrieving George's engagement ring from his body. Upon learning that the ring was actually going to go to his family, she argued that she purchased it for him, so she should get it back. But when it became clear that she wouldn't get the ring, her focus then shifted to her safety. She was being really dramatic, and she was suggesting that George's family might target her for revenge and wanted assurances from the detectives about her protection. And their response was simple. She would be under arrest, so she wouldn't be in any danger. And I was like, damn, that was a bombshell moment.
Do you promise everything you told us was the truth? Or no? Everything we've talked about today?
Yes. What do you mean?
He asked to swear. Remember how I swore you yesterday on the audio recording? I just forgot, so he raised his hand to remind me to tell you.
Okay.
Do you promise and swear that everything we've talked about today has been true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
For which
True
everything?
and accurate to the best of your knowledge.
What, that it wasn't intentional?
Everything you've said today, everything that's come out of your mouth has been true and accurate to the best of your knowledge.
To the best of my knowledge.
Correct. Yes.
Why?
Because anytime we talk to somebody, to assure that everything that we've talked about is
true and accurate to the best of that person's knowledge.
It's not a trick question.
To the best of my knowledge?
To the best of your knowledge.
Everything that you've told us today is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge.
Yes, but it was not intentional.
Okay. Okay.
All right, do me a favor, stand up. I need you to turn around, face the wall, put your hands behind your back. Do you have anything in your pockets that I should know about?
No.
Okay.
Why is this happening?
Because George is dead.
Not intentionally.
We understand that.
He's still dead.
Based on the evidence collected, the detectives determined that Sarah murdered George, and she was arrested at 5:45 p.m. on Tuesday, February 24th of 2020, and booked at the Orange County Jail on charges of second-degree murder.
Now, some people, when they hear this, they do have thoughts. They're like, murder? Because when we think of a murder, you know what we think of. Like you point a gun at someone, you pull the trigger. But in the state of Florida, second-degree murder is a first-degree felony that falls under the category of a violent crime. And under Florida law, second-degree murder occurs when someone intentionally and unlawfully causes the death of another person, but lacks the specific intent required for first-degree murder. This means that the defendant did not plan or anticipate the death resulting from their actions, but their actions were imminently dangerous to another and demonstrated a depraved mind.
To secure a conviction for second-degree murder, the prosecution needs to show that the defendant acted knowingly about their actions and were dangerous and likely to cause death. However, they don't have to prove that the defendant specifically intended to kill the victim. In Florida, a conviction for second-degree murder carries a minimum sentence of 16 years in prison without the possibility of parole, and a maximum sentence of life in prison. Sarah pleaded guilty at her first court appearance and was held without bond.
So recall how we told you that Sarah's brother was in jail? Well, George Torres's family was not without similar issues.
In May 2024, the Torres family faced another tragedy when George's younger brother, 37-year-old Pharrell Torres, was arrested for allegedly stabbing his girlfriend Vanessa Marie Santiago in the head. Vanessa was a mother of 2 young children, one of whom she shared with Pharrell. The arrest came after Pharrell called 911 himself to confess the crime. During the arrest, he repeatedly sobbed and said, "I'm sorry," over and over. Even as he was being transported to the Seminole County Jail, he continued apologizing through his tears. Pharrell and Vanessa had a long history of violence. In March 2024, Vanessa had called 911 to report that Pharrell had stolen her phone. However, she chose not to press charges at that time. So it appears as though in both Sarah and George's cases, there was a similar thread throughout their past and family history. Interestingly, though, this wasn't Sarah Boone's first suitcase-related controversy. Back in 2016, she posted a photo on Facebook showing her son Lucas inside a suitcase. The post caused a stir, sparking concerns about potential harm and suggesting a troubling pattern of behavior. Orange County deputies were alerted and an investigation was launched. In the end, it was determined that no harm had been done. The Department of Children and Family Services found the situation was consensual. Lucas had apparently asked to get into the suitcase and get his picture taken.
Still, no one should ever secure themselves inside of a suitcase, and I do think that that's a very eerie coincidence. I thought Sarah said that she would never allow her son to get in a suitcase, yet there he was at what age, like 5 or 6, doing just that? I don't know if many people realize how dangerous this is because I thought about it. I jokingly had one of my pets crawl into my suitcase when I was leaving for a trip, and I took pictures and pretended that I took him with me in a suitcase. I didn't, and you should never do that because there is not a lot of oxygen available inside of a suitcase. The air inside the suitcase is also not fresh air. It's not being circulated. And without proper ventilation, the oxygen levels become depleted over time. And then carbon dioxide levels raise rapidly in this enclosed space, like a suitcase. As carbon dioxide accumulates, it can become toxic and it can even affect your ability to think clearly and to function properly. It's really sad and it's a horrific death. And I just did a case on my main channel involving a girl in a suitcase as well. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave it at the end of this video. But going back to Sarah, she maintained that George's death was a tragic accident. She repeatedly insisted that she never meant to harm him, as though that would absolve her. Since her incarceration, she has been notably combative, dismissing multiple attorneys and frequently writing to the judge to complain about her treatment and her legal teams and their incompetence. Sarah regularly complained to the judge about the conditions of her incarceration, even writing a 58-page letter that I have read, and this is handwritten, mind you. All of her grievances were in that letter. She went through 9 attorneys, primarily due to conflicts and challenges related to her behavior and her demands, leading multiple attorneys to resign from her case. Some of the issues she had is that she couldn't get along with her attorneys, she wouldn't follow their advice, and they would have multiple disagreements, resulting in the judge ultimately revoking her right to further court-appointed representation, meaning that she was going to have to pay for an attorney if she wanted one. But at this point, Sarah demanded that she wanted to represent herself, something that she changed her mind at the last minute. But the judge had it with her, and she was pretty much going to have to represent herself so that the trial could move forward. Sarah's unique demands also contributed to complications in her case. She was requesting to be able to have extra snacks, to maintain her energy during court appearances, and a glam squad for professional hair and makeup before the trial to present a certain appearance to the jury. These requests, while they were unusual, were consistent with the pattern of self-representation and attempts to control the trial narrative, even at one point posting a handwritten flyer seeking a new attorney that was willing to take her case, which surprisingly actually worked. I kid you not. This letter got the attention of defense attorney James Owens. I remember listening to an entire interview with him, and he really thought that he could get through to Sarah because a lot of the attorneys just decided to quit because she was hard to deal with. But he said that he understood a lot of her frustration, and he did end up taking her case all the way to trial. And she ended up not representing herself. And he was a damn good lawyer, in my opinion. The trial finally began on October 18th, 2024, and she was allowed to have her hair styled and wear professional attire, but she wasn't allowed to have a makeup artist or like professional makeup. So she was going to have to do the jailhouse makeup. Do you remember when Christina Randall used to do the jailhouse makeup videos? That's how she got started in true crime. Pretty creative.
The trial began with prosecutor William J. reading the transcript from the video of George pleading for his life inside the suitcase while Sarah Boone responded coldly and indifferently. Sarah's defense team introduced a battered woman syndrome defense, arguing that her actions stemmed from years of mutual abuse in a relationship with George Torres. In Florida, the battered woman syndrome defense is used to claim that someone accused of a violent crime acted out of self-defense due to prolonged abuse from their partner. It's based on the psychological toll of repeated violence, where the accused develops learned helplessness, believing there's no escape from the abusive situation. In Sarah's case, her defense argued that the years of toxic mutual abuse from George led her to act in self-defense, or at least under extreme psychological distress. They framed her actions as a response to a perceived ongoing threat, attempting to explain her mindset and potentially reduce her culpability.
I truly think that could have been a valid defense had this death occurred in one of the couple's fights, let's say. But these circumstances are way different. The prosecution goes first, and Prosecutor Jay begins by telling the jury that at the time of George's death, he only weighed 103 pounds and was 5 feet 2 inches tall. So yeah, you're much taller than George, but he was very small. The first impact the prosecutor wanted to make to the jury was that George was not a physically imposing man, given the fact that Sarah intended to argue self-defense and battered woman defense.
She did this with the malicious intent to punish him, and then she went up to sleep and left him to take his final breaths on this earth alone. How many breaths those were, we don't know. The evidence is going to show that it was at least for about 15 minutes, because there's going to be 2 videos that the defendant herself took of this event. The evidence is going to show George Torres is dead because in this defendant's judgment, he deserved it. Now, out of a conscious disregard for whether he lived or died, you will see and hear these videos. What I expect you will hear from a video that began at 11:12 p.m., 45 seconds, on February 23rd, 2020, in Orange County, Florida, is a suitcase on the ground, face down, with the zippers facing the floor. You will hear Sarah, the defendant will say, "For everything you've done to me." Sarah, "For everything you've done to me." Sarah, you. And then the defendant laughs.
He goes on to read the entirety of the transcript from the video that we showed you, where George pleads for his life and to be let out of the suitcase only to suffocate to death.
Now it was the defense's turn. Attorney James Owens addressed the jury, portraying Sarah as a battered woman who had endured years of repeated violence from George. Owens argued that by refusing to open the suitcase, Sarah believed she was protecting herself from a potential violent attack. Sarah's neighbor, Vincent Battaglia, told the jury that he frequently heard daily arguments between Sarah and George through his walls. He added that Sarah had asked him not to tell anyone else about the fights.
Sarah's ex-husband Brian Boone testified about the morning George was found dead, basically what we heard in his first interview at the scene. He said that he was the one who advised Sarah to call 911 immediately. He was a crucial witness who testified to Sarah and George's heavy drinking and their volatile relationship. He also explained that he'd been calling Sarah all morning to ensure she would remember to pick up their son from school that day. Sarah kept declining his calls, which was her habit, as she scrolled on her phone and watched videos. The rest of that day at the trial, the prosecution played Sarah's entire interrogation, where she was combative, argumentative, and insistent that she couldn't be responsible because she lacked the intention to harm George, as if those statements were sufficient to exonerate her from her actions. And I want to comment that as a person who didn't know much about this case when I watched the trial, I really didn't think the interview was as bad. And at first I even thought that the prosecution was terrible until later in the trial when I saw how they kind of put all the evidence together. Next, forensic pathologist Dr. Sarah Zadovich testified about George's cause of death, and we're going to listen to that now.
Did you perform the autopsy?
Yes.
And what were your findings as to cause and manner of death?
So the cause of death, which I put on the death certificate, is positional asphyxia with environmental suffocation. And the manner of death I classified as homicide.
Now, when you perform your autopsy, what information do you have at the time that you begin that examination?
It's incredibly variable. I can have a lot of background information. Sometimes I have none. It just depends on the particular case.
In this case, what information were you provided at the time?
So the information I had was that the decedent was with his girlfriend, and at some point in time in the night, he got into a suitcase, which was then zippered shut. At another point at time, I believe she went to bed, and then the next morning discovered that he was still in the suitcase. And I think that was in about an 11-hour time frame from the information that I had.
Actually, new parents learn all the time about mechanical or positional asphyxiation because when a kid is in a car seat or other device, they're in a certain position. And if they're not moved and they lean their head over and it's hanging down, you learn about the likelihood that they can suffocate and die. So with Mazzy, we have to move her out of her car seat every 30 minutes. And we are going to be on a long drive today. So she can't stay in the same position. George's death was technically mechanical because his position inside of that suitcase prevented him from breathing, coupled with the lack of available oxygen. She was unable to provide a time frame as to how long George would have been in that suitcase before he died.
Right, and the doctor also testified about other injuries George sustained around the time of his death. These included blunt force trauma to his head, left eye, and the upper left portion of his back, as well as his forearms and hands. She noted that none of these injuries showed signs of healing, leading her to conclude they occurred within the hours of or near the time of death. The doctor added that the injuries were consistent with being struck by a baseball bat or potentially being inside the suitcase while it was pushed down the stairs.
Okay, so there was a bat there. It belonged to her son. So if I had to make an educated guess, because I watched this entire trial, like I've said, 4 or 5 times now, I would say if we're going to choose whether it was a bat or the staircase scenario, I would say that it was the bat, because I don't know how many people, including the jury, actually had a chance to look at the space between where the end of the stairs are and what's in front of the stairs. Because I don't think it's possible for that suitcase to be pushed down the stairs. There's not enough room there. It's very interesting, but you can take a look. I'm going to show you a picture of that so you can see what I'm talking about. But no one really addressed that during the trial. And I thought that it left a lot of questions to be had, there weren't answers. And I think that was a misstep for the defense. I think they really should have nailed that down, that the fact there was such a small space there. I don't think she pushed the suitcase down the stairs with George in it. But there were people who testified they heard a loud bang on the wall that night. And I'm not saying that maybe they weren't pushing each other, because they had been violent in the past, or maybe that was another day when they heard that. Maybe she tried to hit him with the bat and missed. I am not sure. But I can just tell you that the likelihood of the suitcase going down the stairs is probably slim. However, could they have gotten down the stairs by throwing it or pushing it? Yes, like before he got into it? Yeah. Like if one of them was like rolling it down, I could see that happening. Sarah said the suitcase had already been moved downstairs by her son weeks prior because they needed to get rid of clothing that he wasn't wearing, and they were already putting items inside of it to get rid of the whole thing. They were just going to bring the whole thing to like Goodwill. We're going to show you a couple of pictures. This is the stuff that was accumulating inside of the suitcase. Even if it was already downstairs and George got in it, we know that Sarah pushed it over a number of times, and we know that they were highly intoxicated.
Right, and George's blood alcohol level was 0.139 at the time of his death, well above the legal limit for driving, which is 0.08. This means he was very intoxicated. He also had caffeine and nicotine in his system. It's possible George's blood alcohol level was even higher when he first went into the suitcase, since the medical examiner couldn't determine exactly how many hours he had been alive before Sarah opened it 11 hours later. At that level of intoxication or higher, his motor skills, judgment, and problem-solving abilities would have been significantly impaired.
I could not find a chart for a man of his weight, but I found one for a 140-pound man that said that with that blood alcohol level, someone would have had to have 5 drinks. And remember, this was after George had been in that suitcase for hours. So yes, he was very intoxicated.
Next, the jury heard from a digital forensic examiner who presented 59 pages of text messages from Sarah's phone, which she shared with George. The messages revealed that Sarah controlled when and how long George could talk to his siblings or adult daughters. The text also showed tension between Sarah and George's family, with multiple exchanges making it clear that Sarah wasn't liked or welcomed by them. They found her behavior towards George very inappropriate. In one exchange with a family member, Sarah claimed George had hit her in the face, and she said, "I'll get rid of him, and then my life will be better." This message was sent just a month before George suffocated inside the suitcase.
To be fair, and I like to be fair and look at things from different perspectives, to me, that meant if I get rid of him, like if I dump him, but of course, the prosecution is going to present that in a way that makes her look bad. Also, at 42, it could seem odd to be controlling your 42-year-old boyfriend's phone privileges. It's like he is her child.
Detective Chelsea Copsell took the stand and played the final interrogation video with Sarah. In the footage, Sarah rambled, frequently changed the subject, lied, and repeatedly downplayed her role in George's death. After Detective Copsell's testimony, the prosecution rested their case.
Unsurprisingly, people like Sarah often insist on testifying on their own behalf, even if it's against the advice of counsel, and Sarah was no different. Before we get into her testimony, let's go into why someone like Sarah would take the stand to begin with. First of all, Sarah has claimed both self-defense and battered woman syndrome, which can be best explained from the person themselves. So setting that aside, individuals with narcissistic traits feel a strong need to control how others perceive them. And this is probably why she submitted a pretrial motion demanding extra snacks, a glam squad, etc. Testifying allows them to present their narrative directly, potentially minimizing or reframing damning evidence. They also often distrust others, including their own attorneys. They don't believe that their attorney can do a good job like they can presenting their story. This was true in Sarah's case, as evidenced by her going through 9 different attorneys. They also crave attention and validation.
Exactly, and testifying gives someone like Sarah a stage to be the center of attention, even in a high-stakes setting like a courtroom. It's an opportunity for her to elicit sympathy or admiration from the jury and the public. By testifying, she can portray herself as both the victim and the hero in her story, rationalizing her actions and assisting that she was justified or just misunderstood.
This type of self-centered behavior can often backfire. Their lack of empathy and the attempts at manipulation may actually alienate a jury, especially under a skilled cross-examination. Sarah actually revealed her arrogance, her defensiveness, and her lack of remorse by testifying. She began on direct examination by describing her relationship first as idyllic, placing George on a pedestal, and then as tumultuous, marked by instances of repeated violence. She recounted specific episodes where George inflicted physical harm on her, including the time that we told you about where he slashed her leg with a steak knife and even slammed her head against a metal door. Sarah expressed that despite the terrible treatment, she remained hopeful that George would change by telling the jury, "I love him to this day."
Remember how we told you that she and George met at a bar and how their first interaction went? Well, Sarah explained this herself while testifying.
Again, on again, off again.
Yes, this was actually before we had our apartment. That was, I guess, our dating phase.
Okay. So y'all were together for 3.5 years, is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And y'all had actually agreed to marry?
He had asked me yes a couple of times to marry him, and one time I agreed to yes.
Okay. At some time after you and Brian split up, did you meet George Torres?
Yes.
All right. Could you tell the jury how you met George Torres?
I met George when I decided to buck up, I guess, and was tired of trying to patch things up with my ex-husband. And I decided to go one day for a walk across the street and go have a beer by myself and sit and people watch just to get out of my house and a change of scenery.
All right. How did you and George get along when y'all first met?
Very well. It was strange how quickly we hit things off and had so much in common, and I never thought that he would be interested in someone like me, and I just couldn't believe that he was actually interested in me and said a lot of nice things, and 1 hour ended up being 4 hours from when we had first met, and then we would always have something to talk about.
Why couldn't you believe that he would be interested in you?
He was very handsome. He was very funny. He was smart, and I would show up in workout clothes and disheveled hair, and I guess I kind of felt broken from being in the process of the divorce that he knew about. But then one of the things that we could relate also was the fact that he was here in Florida because he had just been divorced from his second wife. So that was another topic that he and I could compare notes on.
She described her life as sheltered. She lived with her parents and grandparents until they all died while she was in high school and later as a young adult. She went from her family home to the home with Brian and then the townhouse that she would share with George. As we go on, you'll notice that Sarah can never answer a question directly or succinctly, and it drove me crazy watching this. Instead, she would add non-pertinent information, even ramble, and this is actually called impression management. It's a delivery effort to control how others perceive you and to steer the attention towards qualities that she thinks cast herself in a more favorable light. At this point, her attorney asked her what the day was like when George died.
Tell the jury what happened when y'all got up.
He was already downstairs, and I went downstairs, and he wanted to start the day off by drinking because it was a day off from his job. And I talked him into cleaning and tidying up the house for a sense of accomplishment. So that is what we did for however long that it took. So we did tidy up the house and got everything in order, and it was kind of a reward, I guess, to be able to sit and enjoy ourselves and sit on the back porch.
All right, what do you mean by cleaning up the house? What did y'all do?
We swept and mopped. We folded some of the laundry. I know that we did the dishes, emptied the dishwasher, just general run-of-the-mill tidying up.
On the day of the incident, Sarah testified that she and George spent time cleaning the house together, and afterward they sat on the back patio to reward themselves for all their hard work.
I cannot help but imagine Sarah made George do all the chores, and then he gets a reward just like her little dogs at the end. But she said that at some point they went to the store to get a second bottle of wine so they wouldn't have to go out later. They already had one left over, so they had about a half a bottle of a Magnum in the refrigerator. So they had more than 20 drinks. She said they walked her 2 dogs and smoked cigarettes. They drank and they engaged in various activities such as playing darts, working on a puzzle, and completing art projects. She described them as homebodies who preferred to stay home and drink together rather than go out and spend a lot of money. She told the jury that she was constantly looking for things to keep George busy. I swear she's acting like he's some kind of toddler who would get distracted and can't make his own decisions. She had leftover art supplies from her 9-year-old, so she gave them to George to paint. She wanted him to, quote, be more creative. And I can't help but laugh, even though this is far from funny. It's like the implication that if she didn't keep George busy, he would resort to violence. Instead, she actually portrayed herself as extremely controlling of his time and his activities. Next, she said they began listening to music and dancing with her 2 dogs. She mentioned how George ended up in the suitcase. Let's listen.
At one point, I guess he knew that I couldn't come up with anything else, tapped me on my knee and said, "You're it." So from there, I ran up the stairs and hid into our shower, just waiting for him to find me so we could hopefully go to sleep soon at some point. And
your shower, is it a tub or just a walk-in?
it's a tub, but it's in the master bedroom, and you have to go all the way upstairs, you have to go in the bedroom, and then you have to go into the bathroom part, and then there's the shower.
So did you lay down in the tub?
At one point, yes, I was.
Okay. So you were hiding?
I was trying.
Okay. And did you believe that he was going to come try to find you?
Yes.
Did you wait?
Yes, for quite some time.
All right. Then what did you decide to do?
That I decided that I need to go to sleep. I'm picking my son up the next day, and we need to start wrapping up the evening. And I went downstairs to find where he was.
And what I think the jury has seen pictures of your, would you call it an apartment or?
It's considered a townhome.
A townhome. So you walk down the stairs, right? Mm-hmm. And at the bottom of the stairs is a bookshelf here?
Yes, at the very end of it, yes.
Okay. So you walk down the stairs and you turn and look in the living room. What did you see?
I don't even think I made it all the way down the stairwell because I was just looking for him as soon as I could to hopefully go upstairs as soon as we could. And I looked over and I saw him settling himself in the suitcase.
What's interesting is that even one of the detectives was like, don't you know the rules of hide and seek? If she's it, she's supposed to go find him, not go hide. But there she was hiding in the shower. But I find all of this plausible. She starts getting tired. He's thinking that she's looking for him. And then he realizes, oh, here's a better hiding spot. Who's done that? You know, you're hiding and you're like, I see a better spot. And as she's coming down, she finds him in the middle of getting into that suitcase. Now, this was an older suitcase that George recently used to visit his adult children. And when he returned, she decided it needed to be donated because it was so broken down. And the zippers don't even have zipper pulls left on them. And that's why she explained it was already down there.
Tell us what happened.
I zipped him up. We thought it was funny. And we're joking about how he was, I guess, small enough to fit inside of the suitcase.
All right, so what happened then?
From there, it was just, we were laughing about it, and it was just strange that he was small enough to fit in there, and then I kind of moved it around a little bit with him in the suitcase still. It was still funny that he was still in the suitcase. Just, I think he and I were just kind of couldn't believe that he could fit in the suitcase.
Did you eventually close the top?
Yes, the top was already closed. As he was settling himself in there, that's how I knew he was in there, was because the top was kind of flopping a little bit.
Okay. So he had gotten in there to hide, and he pulled the top.
Yes.
On top of it. But you could tell he was in there.
Yes.
You saw him right away.
Yes.
All right. So at some point, did you zip him up?
Yes.
Did you? And what was he saying or doing when you were zipping him up?
We just thought it was funny.
Were you both laughing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so you zipped him up. Were y'all still laughing once you zipped him up?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the jury what happened then.
From there, I moved the suitcase around a couple of times, just kind of on the wheels and moved it around. And at that point, it was funny. We were joking and laughing about it.
Now, it may have started out as a joke, but Sarah told the jury that while George was confined, she saw an opportunity to address his past behavior. She took the opportunity to have a conversation about things that she didn't approve of. She admitted to recording those videos where she was taunting him, referencing the times that he had harmed her, presumably as evidence of some kind, or maybe for her own personal trophy. Who knows? Because why would anyone record that?
Alcohol.
Exactly. Alcohol. There's that. But here's what she said was the reason.
That's when I went over and decided to videotape to just see the jest in it, for him to understand that right now I feel safe and right now I have the ability to actually speak to you in a manner that normally I would not have the ability to do.
And you were intoxicated.
Yes.
And you would agree that you said some things you should not have.
Yes.
Right. But you realized he could not get out and get at you. Is that fair?
At that moment, yes.
So it goes on for about 10 minutes.
Yes.
You heard it here today, did you not?
Yes.
You heard his voice as he was speaking from the suitcase.
Yes.
That was his voice on the video and audio.
Yes.
And you heard your voice on the video and audio.
Yes.
That was your voice.
Yes.
All those things said by the man were said by George in that 2-minute video.
Correct.
All the words said by the female were said by you in that 2-minute video.
Correct.
Were you intending on showing him the video the next day?
Yes.
At the time or the next day, is it fair to say you don't even remember videotaping?
I do not.
So, from what you can tell from watching it, did that refresh your memory about that event?
It did.
So really, this was a way for her to show him that she had power over him. He was trapped, but she told the jury the reason she said the things that she did to George was because she was constantly afraid of him. And now she could truly express herself.
But are we buying this?
No, we're not. And it refreshed her memory all right. I think she was shocked when they played that video in that interview room. But I want you to hear how she was feeling at the time after flipping over the suitcase.
Were you in fear?
Always.
If he would have gotten out of the suitcase, what would he have done to you?
Like he used to tell me, he probably would have made me unrecognizable, or I would have lost my life.
Did you lose the grip on the suitcase?
Yes.
Where was the bat in relation to the suitcase?
It was leaning up against the dining room table, right there.
How far was the bat from the suitcase?
3 feet, 2 feet.
Was his hand still out of the suitcase?
Yes.
And was he getting out of the suitcase?
He very much was trying, yes.
And so what did you do?
For the split-second reaction that I had, I happened to see that, and I grabbed the baseball bat and was trying to poke his hand to go back in, to please don't break through, please. So I hit his hand.
Did you hit the outside part of his hand?
Yes.
We've seen the photographs of his left hand. Did you cause the bruising there?
I'm guessing yes.
Now, you've seen the bat. It's a youth bat?
Yes, I bought it for my son.
Is this the bat you used?
Yes.
And you said you poked him with it?
Yes, I kind of pushed, like I held it with the skinny part here and then
So the grip here.
Prodded at it, yes.
You grabbed it with both hands here.
Yes.
And then the barrel of the bat, the big part of the bat is here.
Correct.
And you thrusted it into the different areas of the suitcase?
I started with his hand, and his hand, he was still trying to get out. He was still trying to do that. So I started to push on the suitcase around it, hoping to have his hand retract and go back inside.
You made those injuries.
I did.
We've seen the photographs.
Yes.
We see the bruising. Is that from that bat?
Yes.
Eventually, did his hand go back inside from you doing?
Yes, finally he had subsided and retracted his hand.
So in your mind, did you prevent him from attacking you?
Absolutely. Split-second decision.
Okay, so now he was getting out of the suitcase.
Yeah. And she was sitting there hitting his hand with a bat. Sarah told the jury that between the 11 minutes of those two videos being taken, George had become abusive and he was frightening her. So much so that she was terrified that if he got out, he would, rush over to her quickly and start harming her. She thought that because it was damaged, she was going to hop out. She feared that he would break out of the suitcase knowing it was damaged, not well made. She said his hand started to come through the suitcase, so she shook it, trying to get his hand back inside. He was in the fetal position, so I cannot truly get on board with this. How is it a split-second decision either? That did not make sense. And he was upside down. But according to Sarah, she was so scared for her life from the things that he had done in the past. But then when his hand went back inside, this change in his demeanor allowed her to calm down for a minute. And that's when she decided to flip the suitcase back to its original position.
Now, once he retracted his hand, do you remember zipping it up some? Or what did you do in relation? Because he was upside down, was he not, at that point?
Yes.
At some point, you flipped him back up.
I did.
Tell how that happened.
He wasn't cursing. He wasn't threatening. His hand was inside foremost. There was no more of him trying to break through the suitcase. So I felt safe enough to turn it back over. It wasn't happening anymore.
And that's when she took the 22-second video that showed the suitcase right side up again from her position on the couch. In that video, he says, "Sarah, one last time," before the video ends. She said that she felt she left him enough room to get out alone. She believed that he could breathe inside the suitcase and never thought he would die. She only wanted to give him time to stop being angry. She said she didn't want him to die, but she didn't want to die either, that she believed he was going to take her life. But then she would contradict herself by saying she thought that he would eventually get out on his own. Remember that? So it's back and forth. And does that even make any sense? You would think the longer you make someone stay in there, the more enraged they would become.
Unless she hoped that he would sober up.
That's actually true. That's a good point. However, Sarah insisted she was too terrified to let him out. Now remember that he doesn't sound angry during the longer video. He sounds scared. He's begging her. He's saying, "Babe, I can't breathe. I can't effing breathe." He never says like, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to end your life. I'm going to make you unrecognizable," which were her claims. At this point, by her own testimony, she has unlawfully imprisoned George and committed an overt act by hitting him with a baseball bat. And under the law, a baseball bat can be considered a deadly weapon. And nothing is getting better for Sarah.
Typically, a victim's or defendant's prior bad acts are carefully weighed for their probative value versus the potential prejudicial impact. However, since Sarah claimed battered women syndrome, she was allowed to introduce evidence of prior violence George had allegedly committed against her. Her attorney presented a collection of photos showing Sarah with bruises, wounds, a severe black eye, and even injuries from the incident where she claimed George had stabbed her in the leg. The complication with this is that both Sarah and George had been arrested for violence against each other in the past. Their relationship was toxic, and their physical similarities, Sarah weighing about 98 pounds at the time of her arrest and George only weighing about 103 pounds at the time of his death, might lead a jury to conclude that they were evenly matched. and that George could not overpower Sarah, and that they would both hurt one another in these fights. Therefore, Sarah wouldn't have been scared for her life.
Right. They were just trying to show, like, she wasn't scared. They both fought each other.
The jury might doubt Sarah Boone's claim of battered woman syndrome because both she and George were arrested for mutual aggression rather than one-sided altercations. And Sarah's recorded taunting of George in the suitcase seems inconsistent with the behavior of a battered person, acting out of fear or trauma. To avoid this hurdle, the defense tried to focus on emotional or psychological manipulation rather than purely physical dominance.
That George was somehow wearing Sarah down. How the defense made Sarah look was that she was so in love with him that she couldn't leave.
She told the jury that to this day, she still loved George and missed him.
George was very passionate. George was a very real person. George was nice to me on the good days. George complimented me. George and I were two bodies with one soul, he and I would always say. I don't believe that I've ever had a connection with anyone like I have with George.
Did you have that connection with your ex-husband?
I did not.
Was it even close?
No.
Despite George's good traits, Sarah testified that he had many bad ones, including a tendency to overdrink. She claimed that if George had it his way, he'd drink from sunrise to sunset. She recalled times when he would take her debit card, buy a large bottle of vodka, and finish it all in a single day. She also testified that George battered her so frequently that the incidents blurred together, making it hard for her to recall specific instances. According to her, George would regularly call her terrible names, and ones we can't even repeat here.
Yeah, like the B word, the C word, the SLUT word.
The jury was also shown photos of an incident where George smashed Sarah's television with a baseball bat. According to Sarah, this happened because her ex-husband Brian had come over earlier to help her son figure out how to play video games on the TV, and George became jealous. She testified that George was worried that she might get back together with Brian, so George destroyed the TV so there wouldn't be any reason for Brian to come back over again. After smashing the TV, George passed out on the couch from drinking, still holding the bat in his hands. This photo was presented to the jury as evidence.
Okay, but I remember I was in the live chat during the trial and I was reading what everyone else was thinking and then saying, and I was thinking the same thing. This looked completely contrived. We're going to show it to you, okay? This looked like they were going to get a new TV and they thought it would be funny to destroy the one that they already had. It looks completely staged, like he's pretending to fall asleep with the bat on the couch, because this does not look like somebody really passed out. People don't pass out like that. I don't know. It's weird. You can tell me your thoughts, but you would also kind of have to be following along with the whole trial to actually like understand the context, I think. But to a lot of people, including myself, it just felt like these pictures were taken in the moment of them joking around, but later used for a different context. But hey, I could be wrong. She said that George would also threaten her animals, and if she ran from him, he would threaten to open the gate and tell her she would find her dogs dead on the street or bloated in a pond across the yard. He used her love for her dogs against her. She said that her blind dog would immediately cower under the table whenever she heard his voice, and the deaf dog would avoid him too, because he would regularly kick the dogs to punish her. And that's really sad. I hope she's not telling the truth. So why stay with him?
For love, Sarah told the jury that she stayed with George because she loved him and believed that by working through their issues together, she could help him become a better person. She thought that by tolerating his flaws and persevering through the challenges, he would eventually turn back into the man that she fell in love with 3.5 years earlier at that bar. Sarah believed George had his demons, but she thought those could be managed with a better job and less drinking.
So she was a fixer.
The White Knight.
But I think she had too many issues herself to help him fix any that he had, if that's what she truly believed anyway. She told the jury, quote, "Love is very strong and love is very deep, and I believe it is not understood in a lot of ways for how different people react to it. And I very much, deeply and passionately love George. I love him to this day. At the beginning of my divorce, it was very nice to have him around, and he was a man's man to me. I felt protected, and he was very nice. As lame as it sounds, he used to compliment me, and it made my day," end quote. Well, I think Sarah has an odd way of showing love. But one big question I think the jury was going to have and the defense needed to clear up was, if all this is true, why didn't Sarah say this from the beginning? Why is she now saying she was frightened of George? But that wasn't her story to 911 or to anyone else until trial.
Right. Sarah admitted that she initially lied to law enforcement about her relationship with George because she never trusted them. It wasn't until after her arrest and consultation with legal counsel that she revealed that she had been in a violent relationship, and she claimed that she feared for her life on the night George stepped into that suitcase.
During her cross-examination, the state subjected Sarah to rigorous questioning to challenge her narrative and highlight inconsistencies in her testimony, even scrutinized Sarah's decision to record videos of George pleading for help while she taunted him. They emphasized her lack of action to assist him, even as he repeatedly stated that he could not breathe. Throughout her testimony on cross, Sarah maintained that she did not intend for George to die and that her actions were influenced by fear stemming from prior abuse. There was one point where the state played every single body cam video from every single time the police came out to that townhouse, going back to 2018. And of course, we're not going to play those, but I thought that it would be good to do like a compilation of them to give you an idea of what both George and Sarah were like during these altercations and intervention by the police.
But in this compilation, one video really stood out.
Yeah, and it's one that actually made me cry when I first saw it at trial.
It was the one where George, of course, was intoxicated, and I'm guessing Sarah was too, and she was documenting George's antics. But his antics were him trying to be close to her, the woman that he loved.
I didn't even want to watch it when I had to record it. I mean, he saw me, I was like crying, I was in tears. It's just really sad, because I can't imagine someone I love talking to me like that. But we're going to play a part of it for you. And Sarah begins recording when George is up against her bedroom door. And I know I keep comparing the way she's treating him to maybe the way that she would treat her dogs. But that's what reminds me of, like, your dog wanting to get in your bedroom to cuddle with you at night. And, you know, maybe you don't want him in there to get on your bed. She seems really annoyed. And it's just hard to watch. But let's go ahead and watch the clip.
So you remember this? Are you drunk right now? No. How much alcohol did you drink?
Enough to be drunk.
You're slurring your words. You're sleeping up against the door right now.
Yeah, because I want to be next to you.
Did I not tell you to not bother me?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is it you come up and do? What time is it right now? It's 1:20 a.m.
Okay. I haven't bothered you since then. I just go to sleep.
But didn't I tell you before at 9:30 to not bother me at all?
Yes.
Because why?
Yeah, it took too long.
Nope. Because I've been up since 4 a.m. since yesterday when you f***ed with me.
Yes, ma'am.
I know how much vodka was in that bottle. And what's the bottle now?
Kind of to throw it out. Maybe
What does that mean?
one more drink.
The bottle's empty. I know how much vodka was in there. Enough for two people to have a really good time. And who drank it? I want it to be documented that I'm leaving you, which means that you're getting out. You're getting out. You're getting out.
Nobody's leaving nobody. Stop.
And the reason why you were even downstairs and weak enough to get drunk was because you don't give a shit about me. You don't listen to what I say. Special things that I keep on my front page of my phone so I remember to tell you about it because of how special and fun it is. I always bother you. I always bore you. You don't listen to me. Yesterday was my first day at work, remember? And I ended up 90% hearing about your day and 10% about mine.
You don't bother me or anything without talking. Sometimes you just you overwhelm me. That's the problem. You overwhelm me.
I'm leaving you, and I'm going to try and cancel plane tickets.
No.
Because I don't do special things for people like you that are doing this, like, to me, after I asked you at 1:21 in the morning. I wanted to be asleep. I wanted to stay asleep, which is why I got into bed at 8:30. I told you not to step foot in the bedroom. So what do? Nonetheless, you're drunk. The amount of alcohol, I know how much was out. I know how much was in there. That's why I could smell you in the bed before you actually got me up. I can smell you from here. You're despicable.
How am I despicable? I'm not even doing anything.
Leave me alone.
Okay.
You're not going to remember shit. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not doing nothing right now.
Get away from me. Get away from me.
I'm not doing nothing to you.
You do everything to me all the time. All the time. Heartache and pain is what you cause me. Heartache and pain.
How is that?
Keep going. And I dare you. I dare you. I dare you. You get on your fucking little bike and go to fucking work tomorrow. Don't look at me. Don't come close to me. Don't touch me. Do you understand?
What do you mean?
As of this moment, and until I can get you out, I dare you. Yep, look at it. Get away from me. Get away from me. Get away from me. I'm gonna scream bloody murder. I'm gonna scream bloody murder.
It's all about Sarah. I think you can tell who controls who. He's not allowed to sleep in her bedroom? It's really confusing to me. It's always a punishment. He looks like a puppy with his head down, and she's just like, get away from me. And he does. She just wanted a punching bag to take out all of her anger and aggression. And it's true. Once provoked, George would definitely get to the point where he would get mad. But these videos definitely painted a picture of who Sarah really was behind closed doors.
And at the end, the prosecutor asked Sarah to step down from the witness stand to demonstrate how she zipped the suitcase shut. Wearing white gloves, she complied with the request. The demonstration was intended to give the jury a clearer visual of the incident and evaluate Sarah's credibility as she reenacted her actions that night.
This gave a really good perspective on the size of the suitcase because I thought it was much smaller, but it's actually 28 inches long by 20 inches wide, and it's about 9 inches deep. I have one similar at home, and it is pretty large, and I can see somebody getting into it. But this is a very confined space. And I think the way the zippers were, they were hard for Sarah to pull during this demonstration, and that, I think, really did not work in her favor. It showed that you could not get out of it easily.
From what I remember, this is how the suitcase was. This was up here. This was not this hard either. So this was like here.
Okay.
Right here.
About right there, ma'am?
Sure.
Okay. I assume this one was much closer? It's not over there? Where did you
You asked me where I zipped it.
When you say that it was zipped shut, show us.
Are you talking about how I zipped it, or?
When you're done zipping
With
it
the hole.
shut and he's inside of it, where are the zipper components? Tell me, what was that?
I mean, it was the corner. I mean, the corner was
right
cut
here?
open. I mean, it's not. Yes, this one was already pretty much, yes. From what I can remember. That's how he was cutting with his hand out. It was like this from the corner part.
Okay. Thank you. You can return to your seat.
Throughout the cross-examination, the state aimed to portray Sarah's actions as deliberate and malicious, challenging her defense of being a victim of prolonged violence. They sought to demonstrate that her behavior during the incident was inconsistent with someone acting out of fear or self-defense, undermining her claim of battered women syndrome. They repeatedly questioned her decision to leave him confined inside that suitcase while she went to bed, suggesting a negligent disregard for his well-being. Because remember, there's no intent in second-degree murder. The defense also called an expert witness in the field of battered women syndrome. However, due to objections by the prosecution, she could only testify hypothetically. Dr. Julie Harper testified that her analysis of Sarah, requested by the defense, showed that she had narcissistic traits, but did not meet the criteria for a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. She diagnosed Sarah with anxiety and PTSD, and she said that in her expert opinion, Sarah was suffering from battered women syndrome. Both the prosecution and defense delivered compelling closing arguments. The prosecution emphasized that Sarah's actions were deliberate and malicious, and highlighted those videos where she taunted George as he pleaded for his life inside the suitcase. They argued that her actions went beyond negligence, and they wanted a verdict of guilty for second-degree murder.
The defense painted Sarah as a victim, arguing that her actions were a misguided response to the trauma she had endured and the effort to protect herself from an attack. They emphasized that Sarah genuinely believed George could escape the suitcase on his own, which they claimed meant her actions lacked the malicious intent the prosecution alleged.
The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours and found Sarah guilty of second-degree murder, which carries a sentence of 22 and a half years to life. She was previously offered a plea deal of 15 years if she pleaded guilty to manslaughter, which meant she would have probably been out as early as 12 years. And she apparently rejected that offer, another big mistake on her part. This fast deliberation and the guilty verdict showed the jury's alignment with the prosecution's portrayal of Sarah's actions as intentional and malicious. This was a profound tragedy, and it was marked by a toxic relationship that spiraled into an irreversible loss. George's life ended in an unimaginable suffering, and Sarah had to face devastating consequences of her actions. Both lives were shattered, serving as a heartbreaking testament to the toll of domestic issues, addiction, and unresolved trauma. Sarah was sentenced a few days ago on December 2nd, 2024, and at that sentencing hearing, various family members of George's delivered emotional statements expressing profound grief and the enduring impact of his loss. His mother in particular spoke about the pain of losing her son and the void that it created in their family. She emphasized that Sarah's actions not only took away a beloved family member, but also created immeasurable suffering to those who loved him.
I just want to tell Sarah Boone that I don't hate her for what she did. And I always remember that evening when that lady came into my door and she knocked at the door. And she asked for my name. I said, I tell her my name. And then she said, "Can I come in?" I said, "Okay, yes." And she told me to sit down. I never think that was going to be my son. And then she said my son was dead. Since that day, I can't sleep. It's hard for me to remember that moment. My son is not here no more.
When it was Sarah's turn to speak, of course she did, and that is her right. It's her opportunity to, tell the court that maybe she doesn't deserve such a long sentence. But it was a very long-winded speech. You think I could talk a long time? Sarah talked for a good 15 minutes.
Sarah referenced kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. She did that to illustrate her perspective on personal growth and healing. This practice highlights the fractures rather than concealing them. This technique transforms the object's history of breakage into a unique aspect of character.
What I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Kintu Sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu Sukuroi. In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by George Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se.
Yeah, and I feel like she thinks she's so much smarter than everyone else. Everyone is below her. And she's thinking that she's drawing this parallel between this practice that you just talked about and her own experience. She was indicating to the court that she had embraced her past traumas and imperfections as an integral part of her identity now.
Yes, and using this metaphor, Sarah was showing her transformation and resilience in the face of adversity.
But it could have been a beautiful message of understanding of the impact of her own actions. The only problem is George can't be brought back alive with gold, Sarah. He's broken in a way that can never be fixed. And Sarah isn't sorry. She's her own worst enemy as well. She undid all of her attempts at clarity and responsibility by going on this unhinged 14-minute rant where she's insincerely forgiving everyone who had crossed her or wronged her, indicating herself, the internet, the prosecutors, George, his entire family, and it was in an extremely unflattering light. I will link it below so you can watch it in its entirety because I'm not going to give her a stage for 14 minutes right here, right now.
And it seemed like all she did was tear down George. Unfortunately, it didn't end there, though. She also insincerely thanked George's parents, siblings, and adult children for failing to help her when she complained about the abuse. She also pointed out one of George's brothers was himself off to prison for allegedly stabbing the mother of his baby in the side of her face.
Yeah, we did mention that as well. And the judge, he was unmoved by Sarah's remarks and her theatrics, and very succinctly emphasized the severity of Sarah's actions, highlighting the evidence that showed her mocking George as he pleaded for his life, pleaded to breathe, and he noted that her behavior demonstrated a blatant disregard for human life, leading him to give her the maximum sentence allowed, life in prison without the possibility of parole. And I have to say, I'm not surprised. I think it was well-deserved.
The court has had the opportunity to review the evidence and testimony that was presented at trial, the victim impact statements presented here today, the statements of character witnesses, both orally and in writing, Dr. Harper's report and testimony, the defendant's testimony, pre-sentencing investigation, the arguments of the state and the arguments of the defense. Court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life. and the Department of Corrections.
The life sentence reflects the court's stance on the gravity of the crime and Sarah's responsibility for George's torturous death.
There have been a lot of sentences this week in many cases that we've been following, and I have to say, the jury seems to be getting it right, putting people where they deserve to be for as long as they deserve to be there. And in closing, we want to share an important message. The popularity of true crime can sometimes be seen as voyeuristic or as a substitute for entertainment. The motivations behind true crime consumption run much more profound than these cynical criticisms, and we have heard them time and time again. As the host of this podcast, we seek to reflect on the complex motivations and the emotions behind the crimes and remember the victims.
Our primary purpose in exploring these acts is to bear witness to the profound impact of their cruelty. By delving into these stories, we confront the darker facets of human nature and society. This act of witnessing is a way to acknowledge, to understand, and to help us navigate the complexities of crime, justice, and the human condition.
Through these narratives, I try to use my own education in law and psychology to look deeper into the complex motivations. And with our experience with researching and telling these stories, we are trying to examine the flaws of the justice system and the importance of viewing them through a lens of empathy and compassion. We hope that our true crime audience uses our storytelling to engage with the realities of violence and its aftermath. We hope that we're helping to foster empathy and perhaps inspiring action to prevent future tragedies like this one. So we want to reinforce the ability to trust your gut. And more specifically, if you see something, say something. Thank you so much for being part of our community. And as always, thank you so much for watching.
We'll see you in our next one.
Bye.